Good morning, everyone. I call to order the February meeting of the University of Minnesota Board of Regents. Thank you to everyone who's joining us in the boardroom and via live stream today. I will also note that Regent Talrabi is attending via Zoom. Hello, Regent Talrabi, if you are there. At this point, I would like to turn immediately to business, if we may. Our first item today is the recognition of two of our talented faculty members who received national honors, Professor R. Lawrence Edwards and Professor Maria Gini. President Cunningham, would you please join me at the podium?
Thank you, Chair Mayron. This morning, I am honored to celebrate members of our university community who recently received the National Medal of Science. To give you a better sense of how prestigious this award is, the National Medal of Science is the country's highest recognition for scientists and engineers. What makes it even more incredible is the fact that of the 14 individuals who received the honor this year, 2 of them are from the University of Minnesota. This truly illustrates our reputation as a global leader in research and education. Throughout their careers, R. Lawrence Edwards and David Tillman have transformed the fields of geochemistry and ecology. And today it is my honor to formally recognize one of those recipients for their tremendous achievements in pushing the boundaries of science and innovation. Unfortunately, David Tillman is unable to join us here today, but we have the opportunity to recognize him at the Board of Regents in May. That said, Professor Edwards, please join me at the podium. R. Lawrence Edwards is a renowned isotope geochemist whose work has transformed the understanding of Earth's climate history and ocean chemistry. His research has shed a bright light on the causes of abrupt climate change and the rapid melting of ice sheets at the ends of glacial cycles, helping us build a stronger foundation to navigate our climate future. Using a novel combination of data from cave deposits, ocean sediments, and ice cores, Professor Edwards established patterns of our changing climate in time and space, leading to the strongest evidence yet, of human-induced climate change. On behalf of the University of Minnesota, Professor Edwards, congratulations on this very well-deserved honor. Here at board meetings called handshakes around the horseshoe. So Professor Edwards, I'd invite you. They want a picture. Okay, let's see. Maybe over right here a little bit.
Yeah, there you go.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for your work.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Edwards. As if 2 National Medal of Science recipients was not enough, I'm thrilled now to formally recognize Professor Maria Gini, who was recently honored with the Presidential Award, that would be the U.S. Presidential Award, for excellence in science, mathematics, and engineering mentoring. Professor Gini, please join me at the podium. Gini is one of only 25 individuals from across the country to receive the nation's highest award for science and math mentorship. This award highlights the vital role that American teachers and mentors play in shaping the next generation of technical leaders. Professor Gini is a world-renowned researcher, educator, and mentor in computer science. She is an industry leader in the field of robotics, artificial intelligence, and multi-agent systems. And for more than 40 years, Professor Gini has exemplified a steadfast commitment to student success. Her extraordinary leadership as a mentor for underrepresented students in STEM has made a profound impact on the academic and professional journeys of countless individuals here at the University of Minnesota. Thank you, Professor Gini, for playing such a significant role in inspiring the next generation of leaders who will push the boundaries of science and technology forward for the betterment of our society. I know our Regents would like to formally congratulate you on this as well, but first, a round of applause. Yeah.
Again, congratulations to our award winners. You make the U of M so proud. It's just incredible. So again, thank you. Our next item is approval of the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. The motion is approved. Now I will turn to my chair's report. As we look forward to 2025, among many important priorities are the board's budget and also the policy requests before the legislature. These requests on behalf of the board include amending the Minnesota Open Meeting Law to allow the board to close meetings for discussion of potential transactions or contracts where the disclosure of information would put the university at a strategic disadvantage in those negotiations. The second request to the legislature is to add clarification to the Minnesota Open Meeting Law to permit regents to participate in a meeting virtually as long as proper notice is given and the public can access a location to view the meeting. And the last request to the legislature is to establish a standard date or transition period between the election of regents and those taking office. My colleagues and I are working closely with the team in government and community relations to advocate for all of these university requests, and of course, budget is most important. If you have not already marked your calendars, the university's Day at the Capitol will be held next week on Tuesday, February 18. We hope to see you all there. We hope the weather cooperates as well. My board colleagues and I are also keeping abreast of the very rapidly changing national landscape. I'm confident that President Cunningham, with her leadership team, are well-positioned to steer the university through any upcoming changes to federal policy that impact the university. Finally, this spring, the board will round out our pilot program of listening sessions throughout the system. Regents will be on the west bank of the Twin Cities campus at the Sky Bridge on Wednesday, February 26th, on the east bank of the Twin Cities campus near the bookstore in Kaufman Memorial Union on Thursday, March 20, and on the Rochester campus on Thursday, April 10. If your schedule allows, we would love to hear from all of the university community, students, faculty, employees, at any or all of these upcoming sessions. That concludes my comments, and let's continue on with the agenda. The fifth item on our agenda is to receive and file reports, which includes virtual forum comments. Please note the comments are linked in the docket materials. Next, we will consider the consent report. The consent report includes gifts and the report of the naming committee. Before I invite a motion to approve the consent report, you are certainly welcome to ask questions, make comments, or ask for an item to be separated out from the report to be voted on separately. Are there any questions, comments, or requests to separate an item out? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the consent report?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion or questions, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. The motion is approved. The next item on our agenda is to review a resolution intended to clarify the university's guiding principles related to institutional speech. Statements which are attributed to the university, its departments or units, and shared on official university communication channels. This resolution was informed in part by the report and recommendations of the Task Force on Institutional Speech, which were submitted in early January of this year to the university, to the president of the university, and to the Board of Regents. Let me start out by saying the board is incredibly grateful for the task force report and recommendations and for its extensive consultation process that the University Senate, engaged in and across many university stakeholder groups. In fact, I think it's, if you look at Appendix B of the task force report, I counted there are more than 25 different constituencies, stakeholder groups that were consulted in order to arrive at the task force report. That work has added significant value and informed the development of the resolution that is before you today. Let me just set a context for this as we talk about the resolution. As public officials charged to shape and support the land-grant mission to serve the state of Minnesota, it is the board that is ultimately responsible for charting a course that is in the best interest of the university at large. Consequently, it is the board's responsibility and authority to guide the university and to establish a clear positions on matters such as this. What is institutional speech? What is not? First and foremost, this resolution reaffirms the board's strong support and commitment to individual academic freedom and freedom of expression within the university community. We are in agreement with the task force to the extent that they have made that point clear as well. Second, while reaffirming individual academic freedom, the resolution also articulates what constitutes institutional speech and clarifies that institutional speech will focus exclusively on the university's mission and operations. We all know that individuals both inside and outside the university have emphasized the importance of clarity on the matter of institutional statements And many have noted that the university has been held accountable for statements by academic and non-academic units, including those made by departments or units within them, that have been communicated via official university channels, such as department websites. These have been attributed to the University of Minnesota at large. We recognize that current Board of Regents policy does not adequately address matters related to institutional speech, and therefore, myself and the vice chairs of this board believe that it is incumbent on this board to exercise its responsibility and authority to guide the university in this very important matter. And that is what this proposed resolution is designed to do. If this resolution is approved at a future meeting, the resolution will make the board's position clear. Individuals and groups of individuals have academic freedom to comment as they see appropriate as outlined in the Board of Regents policy, academic freedom and responsibility, and guaranteed by the First Amendment of the Constitution of the United States. Second, statements by academic and non-academic units, such as departments, that are shared on official university communication channels are considered institutional statements, and those statements shall focus exclusively on mission and operations. Third, institutional statements will not be made on topics that do not have a direct impact on the mission or operations of the university, known as matters of public concern. This includes statements by the board, by the president, and other senior leaders. I recognize, and I think all board members recognize, that we have received many emails and communications from all of you, which really says to us about how this process can work, that we can receive input from a variety of different constituencies. And we welcome that input, we read that input, and we will consider that input. In reading those communications, many ask about the details. How is this going to work? Who can say what? Where can they say their individual views, put their individual views? And these are items that are not resolved in the resolution. Rather, the resolution, as you can see from its opening paragraph, delegates to the president or directs the president to work on this issue with the guardrails and the parameters that we have set forth in the resolution. And those details will have to be worked out. We understand that. With that, lastly, I would like to remind everyone here that this resolution today is up for review and discussion. We are not acting on it today. The resolution will return at a subsequent meeting for action. And during that time period, feedback and input, such as the feedback and input we have received, are welcome and will be considered as we devise the final resolution or final version of this resolution that will be voted on at a future board meeting. And with that, I open this for discussion by my colleagues with respect to the resolution that is before you today. Vice Chair Hipsch.
Thank you, Regent Mayor, and thank you for your report. And so where I'm at on this is I believe I wrote some notes down that institutional neutrality for a large land-grant university is essential to maintain our core mission. And a key distinction in the debate is the difference between academic freedom and institutional statements. Academic freedom ensures that individual faculty members, researchers, and students have the right to express their views, engage in research, and pursue intellectual inquiry without interference or censorship. And the university must remain neutral so that it can serve as a forum for debate rather than taking sides on contentious issues. So the university's role is not to act as a political entity or take collective institutional institutional positions on public opinions. Rather, it's here to serve everybody and to listen to everybody and to remain neutral, so everybody can do their job. So that's my opinion, and I support this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Regent Gully.
Thank you, Chair. Like all of you, I think I've received many communications from our faculty and staff on this resolution this week, some of them representing entire departments, entire colleges, representing many, many faculty members. And the thing that I want to address is just that I feel that this resolution is intending to address a very specific issue we could use a scalpel, but we're using a bulldozer. It's intending to address a very specific issue, and instead of addressing that specific issue, it's addressing sort of all institutional speech. And some of the big concerns that I've heard from people really resonate with me and have stuck with me, that this resolution is vague and overbroad. It encompasses a huge amount of speech instead of being really specific about use of the website or use of our social channels. In this resolution, institutional statement effectively includes any communication from any department or college in the university, and it isn't clear that what we mean is a position statement, and even if we were to use that language, we don't have it defined. Some of the things that I've thought of that are really tricky with this resolution are that we have, and it doesn't differentiate between colleges and departments and centers. Some of our centers literally in their mission make public statements, and we don't have any differentiation for that. So if, say, an environmental center is producing a report on climate change for a grant that they received, they couldn't use their letterhead to, say, submit a grant report because of the way this resolution is written. Some of our institutions and our centers in particular literally have matters of public concern in their mission statements, in their titles. And so this does not differentiate that. It's contrary to some of our existing policy and would have a real impact on centers and institutions at the university. Like I said, some of them, like literally in their names or in their mission statements, they say they talk about matters of public concern. There's no way around that. And it talks about it as if academic freedom and freedom of speech is only an individual issue. That's literally not even true in the First Amendment. The First Amendment protects collective rights to action and to speech. And so this idea that is only an individual right feels like an absolute Pandora's box of sort of defining the First Amendment differently than it defines itself. The other thing that I think is really important in this resolution is that we had an entire process that we asked people to participate in over a long period of time, that they put a lot of work and a lot of effort and a lot of thought into coming with a recommendation. Now, it is a recommendation, and we can choose something else, but we didn't even hear from the folks that spent countless hours putting together this recommendation before we decided to take a totally different approach. And I think at the very least, it would have been respectful to have them here to talk about the recommendations that they made, because they did it in collaboration with lots of different people and with a lot of thought and a lot of care. And so for that reason, I cannot support this resolution today. I didn't realize we're not taking action on it, but I think it needs to be much more narrowly tailored.
Regent Gully, if I can just ask a follow-up question. You talked about it needs to be narrowly tailored, and you talked about why you think it's too broad. Can you give me or give us any examples, if you were to narrowly tailor this, what that might look like for you, so that we have that input as well as we look to what we do with this resolution before it comes before the board again?
Yeah,
in some
that's-
fashion or another?
Yeah, of course. That's a really good question. And I would prefer to consult the folks who have reached out to us before I say exactly what I'd want. But for me, I think that really the main things that we wanted to address were using the university website to post about something that was really like happening right in the moment, and using the university's social media channels. So I think that that's one way to address it, is just to be really specific about the things that we're asking folks to do or not to do.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Regent Farnsworth.
Thank you, Chair Mayron. My comments this morning will be brief, as we've talked about, this item will be returning back to the board for action at a future meeting, which will allow for additional opportunities for conversation. First, I also want to acknowledge the extensive volume of communication the board has received on this item, both in support and against its passage. I continue to be a proponent of engagement when it comes to issues like this, so I really do echo our chair's remarks and others' remarks of appreciation for the folks who have reached out on this resolution. My approach to this issue is fairly straightforward, and I actually think it's captured perfectly in the public docket item summary in the docket for today's meeting, which I'll quote and read again. Quote, "The resolution recognizes that current Board of Regents policy and related administrative policies do not clearly address the contours of institutional speech and creates new guiding principles to direct the president on how to implement the issuance of institutional statements by the university." I think Chair Mayron talked a little bit about that. I think you also used the word guardrails. I actually, would prefer if it said guardrails instead of guiding principles, but I think we're all, hold those both at the same time. We've had a number of instances that I believe call for the board in this moment to exercise our duly elected and constitutional governance and oversight authority to address this topic. I think the chair addressed this point in particular very well in her introductory remarks. Thinking about how we proceed forward, I do believe that there's an urgency to address this topic. So I would just ask, Madam Chair, for your consideration to think about calling a special meeting ahead of our regularly scheduled meeting next March to address this point. Certainly, I'm a believer in review action. I think that's important to continue getting input. And also, I did note from one of the letters we received that the timeline in which this resolution was originally posted and the timeline of our virtual comment form, we're pretty close together. So I hear that and think that we should get continued input by the board. But either way, this was noticed for review and action anyway. So I think we should continue with that process, but would encourage a special meeting to consider this sooner and take action on this topic, which I do think has a high level of urgency with it. So thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Regent Kenyanya, Vice Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, colleagues, for the conversation. Also want to acknowledge the input, valuable input that I've gotten. Haven't had a chance to engage with it, but certainly been able to ingest it. Madam Chair, as co-vice chair, someone who had an advanced hand at the resolution, if you will, I'll be the first to admit maybe it needs some work. Because I've gotten good feedback and some good points have been raised and probably will continue to be raised. With that being said, because it is review and action, and we'll have a chance to do more of that. I'll just speak to the spirit and the thoughts rather than the very specific language, things like that. The emails I've received and other outreach, I'd say, I'm oversimplifying, but fall in two camps. And I think the first are those who disagree with the resolution and its spirit altogether. I think maybe that's a difference in ideology, but I'd like to speak a bit about academic freedom. It's my opinion that academic freedom and free speech has and continues to be defended at the university. I recall in 2019, Regent Davenport, Regent Mayron, when we were going through region elections, there were pressures at the legislature around certain kinds of research. And as you went around, you were asked your position. And, we were unequivocal in our support of that. And actually, I think it was worse some cycles even before ours, right? I bring that up to say that, even past board members, I can think of some very specific ones who disagreed with certain research or held certain viewpoints, always understood that there's that line, and that's the main thing that the board is responsible for defending. And in my experience, that's actually, the university has constitutional autonomy, but obviously the state is a partner. That's the one area I've seen the university not really hesitate to draw the line and use constitutional autonomy to say, nope, we're not dictating what happens in the classroom. So, in the past 6 years being on the board, this is something that comes up, I think, more often than people realize. I've received, and I think other regents would probably agree, they've received many communications, whether it be from legislators, from donors, from community members, business partners, who take issue with a course they read about, who take issue with the publication they read about. And for myself, I've never given those much thought, quite frankly, because that's pretty obvious to me and that's very easy to defend. I'm very comfortable sitting with a legislator or donor and defending what's happening in our classrooms, where I agree and where I disagree, actually, So what's harder to defend, at least for myself, I'm speaking for myself, is institutional positions, or what's taken as institutional positions. And I think the impacts are not just external. I've talked a bit about external parties, internal parties as well, because we know we have different groups, and there is a hierarchy. I've never been a faculty member. I won't pretend, to know what that's like. But from what I've heard from speaking to some, there is a hierarchy, right? It can create some people may be less comfortable dissenting and whatnot when there's, a position that's taken. I think as dialogue is stifled elsewhere in society, and universities rightfully, we have been and we continue to want to be and aspire to be and purport ourselves to be the arenas for the dialogue. It's very hard to take positions on the very ideas that we purport ourselves to be an arena for the debate of those ideas. Again, the ones I agree with and the ones I disagree with alike. I think the other camp of comments I noticed were those who weren't as much concerned with the direction of the resolution, but found it confusing, maybe found it unclear, requiring clarification. As Madam Chair noted, maybe it was a directional decision. I don't know if it was the right one or not, but there was the thought to be vague, to let the president do that thorough consultation and write a better policy than perhaps the board could. And again, now we have the benefit of a month to continue the conversation with those who emailed, those who turned out, and maybe get to a better position. And again, some of the outreach I saw, I was like, okay, maybe they have a point there. Maybe let's look at that, right? But directionally, I do stand by, that earlier concern that how can we purport to be the arena? I will say that, it's not even a faculty limitation, a staff limitation, a student limitation. Regent Verhalen, sorry to steal your thunder, but governance met this morning and made some changes to how the board engages in the board community. I mean, these same principles we're going to discuss it later here, are reflected in what the board is doing to make sure that we're distinguishing when we're speaking for the institution versus for ourselves. And again, that's the action that was taken in governance this morning. Regent Gully, I think you brought up good points. And you're right. I mean, we don't create policy or govern in a vacuum. And there are current and past events that probably are catalysts. I do try to not be captured by that and really think beyond. And again, you could land either way with that, but I do try to say, okay, is this a good policy in general? I'm sure the committee in doing their work was obviously certainly thinking of past events, but then, it's unfortunate now with the timing that with the time this resolution is coming up is at a time, well, again, in my opinion, there is a bit of an attack on higher education. And so I understand a faculty member who might not be opposed directionally saying, is this more of what we've been seeing? So I do think that timing is unfortunate. But again, those are my thoughts on why this discussion is being had and why we arrived here. I've always been a proponent of review and action. I think I've opposed every time we've tried to move something to review and action. So that's the exact purpose of this. And again, if we can improve it in the next month, we will. But I do think ideologically that's how I approach this. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Regent Kenyanya. Regent Davenport.
Thank you, Chair Mayron. I want to thank for all the input that we received and note that it did reflect a range of opinions and not just all lopsided. And that's a very thoughtful way to reflect on this, I think. I think this could be a model down the road for consultation, however the outcome is, and that the consultation process is that it informs us, but the outcome rests on the board, and it rests on us to provide what I see this, the underlying goal is clarifying institutional speech so that policy following this reflects where this board is at, and it really rests on us. And so I just want to clarify that. I think, too, I like the analogy of scalpel or bulldozer, although I don't think it's either. And I just go back to this board needs to be clear on where we're at, so that the community can then take a look at the policy and use this as the direction in which they're giving. So again, I think we're all clear on our support for individual academic freedom, but the clarification of institutional speech is really critical, whether it's in this today or in the future, and it would have been helpful in the past. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Regent Tad Johnson.
Thank you, Chair Mayron. I want to thank the task force for its work and for the letters we've received from the university community, which have been very enlightening. And we've read a lot of letters over the last several days. I just want to note that we are at an unusual moment in history, unlike any other time I can remember. And I note that this is a resolution, not a long-term Regents policy. And second, we cannot take away people's First Amendment freedom of speech, but what we can decide is who speaks for the University of Minnesota on its mission and operations with regard to the workings of the university. And this resolution underlines that this authority is expressly reserved to the president, and the president has the authority to determine matters related to this for the university. And since it's up for discussion today, we have some additional time for public comments and wordsmithing that is needed. But in principle, I support it, and I concur with Regent Farnsworth that this perhaps deserves its own meeting. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Regent Johnson. Regent Verheulen.
Thank you, Chair Mayron. As Chair of the Governance and Policy Committee, I appreciate that you acknowledge not wanting to steal my thunder, but I do want to take a minute and the opportunity to really highlight our process, which I think is what this resolution allows us the opportunity to do. So anytime we get a docket item in front of us, there are the 4 checkboxes across the top: review, review and action, action, and discussion. And yes, it's very rare that we have an item that's actually for review and discussion on a certain day. I got you to say yes once. But we specifically have developed our Board of Regents policy to provide an opportunity for all of us to actually talk about these things. We can't have these discussions any other way but this way. To your point earlier, Chair Mayron, about the request to even have closed meetings for critically competitive issues. The only way we all as Regents can get together to have these discussions is in this forum. And instead of us trying to rediscuss the information in the task force report, I appreciate that the approach taken by our leadership was to present a resolution for us to consider and us to react to, and for the public at large to review and react to. And that is why we have venues of communication like our email addresses if people want to communicate with us in private. We have our Board of Regents virtual forum if people want to communicate and then have that information shared as part of the, quote, public record. And while our first delivery of the virtual forum was when this was released, we did receive a supplement on Wednesday of additional materials that have been received since then. And that virtual forum stays open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so that information continues to be populated and continues to inform our decisions. And so feedback is part of this process. And this is really the first step from a board perspective of this process, because we are now able to take reactions to this and make modifications before it comes before us. And does it come before us immediately for action? It depends on what we decide to do for it. That is the beauty of our procedures. But we have to recognize that this process is set out purposefully to be transparent, because we have to act transparently and we have to discuss things transparently and out in the open. And being able to have those other avenues of communication, yes, hundreds of emails, lots of comments on the virtual forum. I expect many more to come, and appreciate our community and our stakeholders engaging in those ways to communicate back to us their own review of a resolution like this, so that we can consider those comments in how this comes before us for future review or future action. So thank you, Chair Mayron, for that opportunity.
Thank you very much, Regent Verhalen. Regent Wheeler.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Mayron. Yeah, this is I really appreciate the process. This is the first time the board has gotten to discuss this collectively, and really appreciate the chance to discuss, as Regent Verhalen said, and then act. And it's so important to get all the feedback from the stakeholders so you understand, what best's at stake. And like the others have said, I've gotten feedback on both sides of this issue. And, perhaps there's a way we can optimize it. One of the things that has not yet been mentioned that I'll say is that I've gotten feedback that, again, rest assured that academic freedom is sacrosanct to all of us and everything that we want to do. We don't want to restrict that in any way, and I think all our actions and previous actions have done so. And that actually is a board-level issue, because the board is the constancy of will and purpose. So it is our responsibility, albeit a divisive, opinions exist. We have to ultimately have the responsibility to call on this one. So I've heard everything from, boy, this actually is impinging on academic freedom, not of individuals, but of us doing it collectively. And then I've heard the other thing, even within units, some members have said, I'm one of those quieter voices, and I might feel tacitly compelled to agree with something I don't agree with, and that's impinging on my academic freedom. So we're hearing both sides. I think it's incumbent on us to come up with this resolution. We can maybe refine it to the comments that have been made here, but I think it's incumbent on the board and its responsibility to be clear about this and state, as Regent Johnson did, that while academic freedom is clear, when you're using it at a unit, you're actually speaking on behalf of the university in many people's eyes. And that's difficult, particularly on divisive issues where maybe quiet voices haven't been included.
Thank you very much, Regent Wheeler. Any other comments or discussion on this resolution? All right, hearing none, then thank you all for your input. Thank you all for the input of individuals who are not here in the room who have provided input to date through emails in the virtual form and other means. Thank you to the audience who we can see the signs up here of focusing on not only academic freedom, but freedom of speech under the First Amendment. All of this input is important to us. We will take it all into account, and we will return at a future meeting to determine where we go from here. I am confident that, is there?
Bo is trying to speak.
Oh, all right. I see Bo is trying to speak. I'm sorry, Regent Tarabi. So I just wanted to say we will be taking your comments, your input into account as we consider this, and it will be coming back for a future meeting for action. With that, Regent Tarabi.
Thank you, Chair Mayron, and I apologize. The features on Zoom have changed, so I can't figure it out. I just also wanted to say that I am supportive of the process of both really for the board to make sure that we are using good process to be able to ask all the hard questions and to consider what the recommendations have been, but to also think through about what is good for the mission of the university, not just for today, but for years to come. And so I know we've heard from a lot of people about very specific situations, which is always good because it gives us context. But I think too that for the board, obviously we got the report and then the resolution, but I would just urge us to make sure that we are thorough in our process of really discussing with each other and learning, educating ourselves as well before we move to action on this, because what feels most important right now at this time at the university is to continue fostering an environment of trust and transparency, which folks have talked about, but also of integrity that we can all feel proud of, even as we have to talk about difficult issues. So I just wanted to chime in and say that.
Thank you very much, Regent Tarabi. Regent Turner, you had a comment.
Yes. Thank you, Chair Mayron. And thank you, Regent Tarabi, because now I feel confident to say what I'm going to say. You know, I'm not an academician. I'm a night shift intensive care nurse who still works at the bedside. So I understand autonomy. I understand being able to use my critical thinking skills, you know, and using my nursing judgment. I can understand all of that. I can also understand the responsibilities that I have with that autonomy and that critical thinking, and my responsibilities to my patient and to my coworkers, et cetera. The whole concept to me, and pardon my ignorance, of the academic freedom is a whole new concept to me. That's not a part of my world. So when Regent Gully, and I get it, we've had all the emails, et cetera. Not my favorite way to learn. My favorite way to learn, being a bedside care nurse, is orally, you know. When she made the suggestion to potentially hear from some of the people that were on that extensive task force, and whether it's at a meeting or I'm able to like meet with people through the board office to have more clarification about this whole concept, is something that I would appreciate. Like I said, Regent Tarabi, when she said that this obviously is something that needs more deliberation. And like I said, I was a little hesitant to expose my ignorance, but there it is.
Thank you. Any other comments or discussion on this topic? All right, hearing none, let me just check on one item here. You ready to go on Or do you want to break?
We see through this resolution. We see through this resolution.
We're going to take a 10-minute break and then we will resume.
Is no solution.
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
Thank you. The board meeting will resume. Now we will hear the report of President Cunningham.
Thank you, Chair Mayron and members of the board. I have a number of system-wide updates that I would like to share with you today, starting with the rapidly changing federal landscape. There have been a number of federal policy changes proposed in recent weeks, ranging from the scope of health research, immigration, and transgender rights to diversity, equity, inclusion that would have direct impacts on our mission and operations. During this time, I've engaged with countless members of our university community who have expressed uncertainty, concern, and fear in response to these new developments. As president, I can assure you that the health and safety and well-being of our students, faculty, staff will always be a top priority. I will continue to advocate on behalf of our community as the university explores every avenue to address the challenges posed by these potential policy changes. Today, I want to take my opportunity to reaffirm the university commitment to our powerful public service mission. Since our founding in 1851, the University of Minnesota has distinguished itself as a global leader in research. It is a core mission. From pioneering the first open heart surgery to unlocking the secrets of DNA repair, our students, faculty, and staff have always maintained an unwavering commitment to serving the world through discovery and innovation. The recent notice calling for a 15% indirect cost rate on all new awards from the National Institute of Health would be a direct attack on our public service mission. This decision would cut reimbursements for research facilities, administrative costs, which cover critical activities ranging from patient safety to research security. I myself have been a principal investigator on numerous NIH grants throughout my career, and I can understand how devastating this announcement is for many members of our community who we have been working to engage over the past week. We are actively partnering with higher education associations such as the AAU and peer institutions across the country, and in our own state, many others in our own state would also be affected, hospitals, other health systems, to identify ways in which we can effectively address this rapidly evolving situation head on. We have implemented a broad outreach strategy to ensure that members of our federal and state delegation fully appreciate the profound impacts of this notice. We are also supporting national efforts led by higher education associations to address the legality of this directive. The university will stand in firm opposition to drastic cuts that impede our ability to advance research, discovery, and innovations that advance our patients and our communities and the health of our state and the nation. We are one of America's leading public research universities, and I will loudly champion the work of our students, faculty, and staff so they can continue to advance research, scholarship, and creative practice for the betterment of society. I also want to reaffirm my commitment and the university's commitment to fostering a diverse, equitable, welcoming, inclusive environment here at the University of Minnesota, one that supports the needs of each and every individual across our 5 campuses, regardless of their citizenship status, sexual orientation, gender identity, or expression. Public research universities like ours play a vital role in supporting and advancing a society that is humane and just. Here at the University of Minnesota, diversity of thought, inclusion of all voices are part of our values, and we know it elevates and strengthens our main mission. Our science is better, our classrooms and our teaching are better, with a wide variety of voices being heard. My leadership team and I truly value the activities that support diversity of thought and inclusion. To further clarify, we have not rolled back DEI at the University of Minnesota, and we are not making any preemptive changes to our existing programs. Instead, we are focusing our commitment to current employees and programs that contribute to this important work. My leadership team and I felt it was the responsible decision to pause expanding our current activities or hiring new personnel until these federal policies are further clarified. I also want to clarify the university's position when it comes to international students and scholars. Our international community has always been a core component of our identity and our excellence, and they will continue to be. The university has personnel and resources in place to support our international students and scholars who may be affected by new federal policy changes or simply have questions and concerns. In recent weeks, I have fielded a lot of questions as it pertains to immigration and customs enforcement. I want to reinforce that campus departments of public safety, including UMPD on our Twin Cities campus, do not have a role in enforcing federal civil immigration laws. Our officers do not view it as their role to inquire about an individual's immigration status. Their focus is on public safety, fostering trust, and maintaining strong relationships across our university community. We recognize that colleges and universities across the country are under heightened pressure and greater scrutiny. That said, the University of Minnesota will not waver in its commitment to fostering a welcoming environment for all of our students, faculty, and staff. Next, I would like to just briefly touch on a topic that's near and dear to my heart, health, and we'll be discussing this at greater extent later in our morning. As many of you know, I served as an emergency physician for 25 years, taking care of patients at the bedside, working with communities to keep children and families safe, and serving in leadership positions at university medical centers. I tend to see the world through health in the broadest sense. Here in Minnesota, we're at an inflection point. Our state, like countless others across the country, faces critical healthcare challenges, from increasing costs, limited access, and declining reimbursements, to workforce shortages and structural inequities that amplify health disparities. Minnesotans have said loud and clear that healthcare needs to work better for them and their family, and I hear you and agree. As one of America's leading public research universities, we have a responsibility to the people of the state to generate new knowledge, to train our future workforce, to help develop new innovations, to drive economic growth, and most importantly, to improve the health of all Minnesotans. So we are proposing a new path forward that I'll be discussing in more detail in a few minutes. The University of Minnesota and Essentia Health have come together to chart a bold new path forward for the future of healthcare in our state. A new non-for-profit healthcare entity that combines our people's systems and capabilities to deliver a new level of seamless, expanded healthcare across Minnesota. Dr. Dave Herman, CEO of Essentia Health, is here with us today, and following this president's report, Dr. Herman and I will provide more information about this newly proposed vision to fundamentally enhance the structure of healthcare delivery in Minnesota. We need transformation. As you know, moving on, our current strategic plan, MPACT 2025, is winding down, and with the final report being presented later today. So now is also the time for us to come together as a university community and reimagine what the University of Minnesota will become, which brings us to our maroon, gold, and bold plan. You will begin to hear this phrase a lot more as we ramp up our system-wide strategic planning, which is indeed ramping up across campus this month. This will point us towards a vision for the University of Minnesota for 2035, while creating firm plans for what we will need to accomplish in 2030 to get there. And so as we work together to design that new vision that represents what we truly aspire to be, I want to hear from our community. We have engaged broad participation activities that will ensure our system-wide strategic plan is not only comprehensive, but reflective of the many voices that make up our university community. Together, we will create a roadmap that honors our past while boldly defining our future. And I really want to thank our co-chairs, Chancellor Nees, as well as Dean Andrew Aline, who are leading that strategic planning process. In the coming days and weeks, the members of our university community, along with key external partners, are invited to participate in a series of town halls, listening sessions, focus groups, and surveys. The bulk of these will be happening in February and March, so please do look for those town hall dates, which are now posted. Through those engagement opportunities, we will gather thoughts, ideas, and perspectives on the future vision of our 5-campus university system, our rich tradition of excellence, which will propel us into a transformative future. Together, we will achieve the unimaginably loudly broadcast our excellence and create a future that reflects the very best of who we are and who we can become. Next, I want to provide some updates regarding 2 important leadership searches. I'll start with the Vice President of Strategic Initiatives, which is a new leadership position here at the university. This Vice President of Strategic Initiatives will play a primary role in advancing multiple of our cross-cutting initiatives that will elevate our shared mission and goals. This person will collaborate and coordinate with senior leaders and stakeholders in shared governance, along with academic and administrative units system-wide, to identify and advance key priorities. Last fall, I convened a search committee co-chaired by Vice President Shashank Priya and Dean Jamie Prinkert, which much thanks to their leadership. That committee reviewed applicant materials and has conducted interviews with candidates before making their final recommendations to me. I am very excited, and I plan to bring next information about that hire to our March meeting. Last month, we also launched a national search for the university's next executive vice president and provost. Provost Croson will step down at the end of the academic year, and so our goal is to identify a new provost by this summer. Dean Sarah DeWalt and Executive Vice President Greg Golden are co-chairing the search committee that includes broad representation across our campuses, schools, colleges, and units. We have partnered with Isaacson Miller, a national search firm, to assist us with recruiting a broad and diverse candidate pool. The search committee held their first meeting last month, where I charged them with identifying and recommending candidates who will elevate our university to even greater heights. This position is critical to our public mission and strategic vision. And so part of my commitment to ensuring our search process is transparent and participatory, we've begun to gather feedback from the university community through a series of listening sessions with key stakeholder groups. That input received in those sessions helped shape the position profile that will be published shortly, and then will then be used to advertise the position and assist Isaacson Miller in the recruitment of candidates. Please do look on the provost web page for any details on the search committee, as well as the position profile. I'll provide more updates on this important search process as we move forward. Before I wrap up my president's report, and I know we talked about it yesterday, and Provost Croson is attending remotely today, but I wanted to congratulate Provost Croson, who recently received the 2024 Distinguished Service Award from the American Economic Association. This award recognizes her significant contributions to the discipline of economics through her varied and numerous administrative leadership roles, and we are very proud of her and appreciative for all of her work, both for the university as well as for her national disciplinary expertise. The selection committee was also highly impressed with her pivotal role in advancing the status of women in the economics profession. So again, congratulations, Provost Croson. Give a look. Thank you for your time and attention. That concludes my president's report.
Well, you haven't been doing much in the last month or so. Thank you. Thank you for your report. Turning now to item number 9, President Cunningham and Dr. Herman will discuss how the new vision for the Minnesota healthcare offers the transformational healthcare solution that Minnesotans need and expect. President Cunningham, if you are ready to proceed.
Thank you, Chair Mayron. And I thought it would be best if I sat here at the table next to my partner here, who we've been working so closely with.
I require close supervision.
Remember the last time you sat there?
I think it was a year ago, perhaps. This meeting is the last time I sat on this side of the table, and I don't think I'll ever forget that, Regent Kenyatta. Thank you so very much.
I think you did okay.
Foreshadowing good things.
Yeah.
So. Thank you again, Chair Mayron. Dr. Herman and I are both very excited to join you here this morning to really talk about a bold new path for the future of healthcare in the state, one that goes far beyond the formation of just new partnerships or transactions. This solution would fundamentally enhance the structure of healthcare delivery for the betterment of all Minnesotans. The University of Minnesota and Essentia Health have come together to propose a solution that benefits all of Minnesota. This new non-for-profit healthcare system entity proposed combines our people, our systems, and our capabilities to deliver an enhanced level of seamless, expanded healthcare across the state. Before we present a video that showcases how this vision would benefit patients and providers across our state, I would like to turn it over now to Dr. Herman.
Thank you, President Cunningham and Chair Marison, for inviting me here today. At Essentia Health, we recognize the critical need for a thriving medical school to benefit the patients we're privileged to serve. We have a clear duty. Our communities are counting on us to support the next generation of caregivers to keep the high-quality care that they currently experience close to home. Across the state, we have to work together to find innovative solutions for health care. Essentia Health truly appreciates the opportunity to engage in these important discussions and do our part to shape this transformational change. We are committed to ensuring a sustainable health care for Minnesotans and all the communities that Essentia Health is proud to serve. In the video we're about to share, we highlight one of Essentia's pediatric oncologists, a colleague of mine by the name of Ross Perko. Ross grew up in northern Minnesota. I probably should say raised in northern Minnesota, because as you meet Ross, he would argue that he's actually grown up at this particular point in time. He went to the University of Minnesota Medical School. He's the family that we're going to talk about right now, the Frederickson family, has strong ties to the University of Minnesota. The father, Frank, went to the University of Minnesota. Mary's uncle, Frank Yuso, played for Murray Warmack on the football team in the 1950s and was a member of the inaugural Minnesota Vikings team. There's a saying that paths should be paved where people walk. This story beautifully illustrates the power of extending this type of collaboration to more patients and more specialties. The vision that we are sharing is about paving that path. So if we could show the video here.
A new day for healthcare in Minnesota. What if we could improve healthcare for all Minnesotans? The University of Minnesota and Essentia Health are setting out to do just that by creating a not-for-profit healthcare entity that supports the needs of patients now and the healthcare demands of the future. How will it serve all Minnesotans? For Minnesotans, it will deliver world-class research that advances treatments and cures, ensure a prepared and exceptional healthcare workforce, and overcome Minnesota's most complex healthcare challenges. For healthcare employees, it will provide resources for fulfilling careers, create a culturally aligned system, and promote innovation and improved patient service. For University of Minnesota students, it will provide an enriching educational environment with healthcare mentors, maintain excellence in health science programs, and create a statewide network for learning, training, and employment. For providers, it will grow a platform to support all patients, foster a vibrant health sciences learning environment, and continue Minnesota's tradition of clinical research and discovery. For patients, it will provide accessible care across Minnesota, improve recruitment of rural providers, and bring specialty health care closer to home. The patient is at the center of this new path forward. Let's hear a real story about how this vision will benefit them from a patient who is experiencing care in Duluth and the Twin Cities.
She's always been very independent, very much I can do it myself.
Strong-willed.
Very strong-willed, yep. But also someone that if she sees someone in need, she'll go right over there and help them.
At end of January in 2024, her heart was racing. She was getting tired, and we took her into a clinic. It was that night that they diagnosed her with leukemia. It was just hard because all the different options and treatment paths. The medical team here at Essentia was really good at bringing us into that discussion.
Initially, this leukemia looked pretty straightforward, and then through the course of getting treated, it kind of had some unique properties to it. And this was a collaborative discovery. You know, our pathologists here, our other oncologists here, along with the university, kind of looked at this case as being a little unique. So because of the partnership that we have, all of the chemotherapy that Catherine needed prior to the transplant was given here. Why that's important and why the network of how we worked with the university is so great is that she didn't need to get all of that initial chemotherapy done far from home.
We added up about 5 months in Duluth, and in July we transferred down to U of M. She went through radiation and the transplant.
We have a larger family, we have 6 kids, and when all of a sudden you're all alone in a room and you have all all these treatments, and it can be a struggle. They were trying to get her into remission so she could get a bone marrow transplant. Our oldest daughter ended up being a 100% match. That was pretty exciting. Doctors were excited, and they hadn't had that for a while.
you end up knowing so much about these kids. The resiliency of Catherine, I think, is the biggest, and just how much her family loves her and how much she just wanted to be a regular kid through all this. Medicine to me has always been about people. I mean, I'm a pediatric oncologist, but I feel like I'm a weird uncle to like hundreds of kids. The goal was always about taking care of Minnesotans. The goal was, how do we get patients in rural areas? And I was very upfront that I wanted to be a pediatric oncologist. I went to medical school at the University of Minnesota Duluth for the first 2 years, and then finished my medical school training at the University of Minnesota. I wanted to stay at one place, and that was pediatric residency at the University of Minnesota. The thing about us is that we work with the University of Minnesota, and these patients are essentially, we're all one unit unofficially because we work with them. So you're getting the same care if you were down in the Twin Cities or if you were here.
It was very nice knowing that that's where Dr. Perko studied, and him and Dr. Hoover had a very nice relationship, and they would be able to talk back and forth and discuss things over with each other.
I am very grateful for the care that we have right here where we live in Duluth. We just had her 6-month post-transplant checkup down in Minneapolis in January, and she's been cancer-free for 7 months.
When you see that M, that means something. Now you have this opportunity of like, we're gonna combine with this group and maybe be part with this group. That's really exciting because there's ownership of this is for Minnesotans. I've never seen physicians more positive, more enthusiastic, and that says something. I think we're just scratching the surface with what we could do with medical education. I mean, the sky's the limit there.
Together, we must meet the critical needs of today and anticipate the demands of tomorrow. It is our duty.
So again, Chair Marin, thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to show that. This is about paving the path where the people walk.
Thank you so much, and the video is wonderful, and that patient story is touching, and just to emphasize that physician had a particular relationship back and forth with the physicians here, and in an individual way, and what could we do if we could make that a story of the systems working across, so that was the pathway for all of our patients back and forth from rural Minnesota in a more seamless way, in a more unified system entity. And so this is a really exciting path. We think, and I think the Minnesota and our public mission to our patients needs a reset here in Minnesota. And what we're looking to do is to really create a reset with a new transformative opportunity that could transform patient care and health for the state of Minnesota. So thank you so much. We'd be happy to take any questions.
All right, we'll open it up for discussion. Yes, Regent Ruth Johnson.
Yeah. Thank you. Just a quick comment right now. It was a wonderful story and video. A couple things that stood out right away in the story was that this is patient-centric, and that this is a form of integration already. That, somebody who could be a pediatric oncologist up in Duluth and then work directly with the University of Minnesota, that's how patients get great care, how they could be as close to home as possible, but also make sure if they need an academic medical center of this caliber and size that they have direct access to that and coordination then with the physicians back home. It's not just one way, it's back and forth. It's absolutely crucial, and this is a good illustration of the benefits of that.
Thank you, Regent Johnson. Regent Wheeler.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Mayron, and thank you very much again for this presentation. I just have to say again that I am so appreciative of you leading with the care model and what this will create and what value it will create for the broader community and all those the patients, all those who serve the patients, all those who train and work and innovate in these areas, and leading with that and leading with that transformation as opposed to a transactional piece really is what we need, frankly. And it's what, as one of the members of the governor's task force, what was asked for of us as well. I will say just that this was presented to the Academic Health Committee yesterday, and well, we know that there's ways to go between here and there's future conversations that we certainly hope will take place with Fairview. That we were certainly endorsive of the concept uniformly. So I feel like I can confidently speak on behalf of the committee on that score as well.
Thank you. Regent Verheulen.
Thank you, Chair Mayron. So none of you knew this, but I know Frank Frederickson very well.
Oh, do you? Oh, super.
And have heard throughout their journey just how truly patient-centric, but how important that collaboration has been for their family at Essentia and here at the university. And this is all well in advance of any conversations that have been had. But I've seen that, and it's real. I mean, what they said is really what the family has experienced. And so knowing that there are individuals out there, like their oncologist at Essentia, who is able to put those pieces together on behalf of their patient is so important. And so, thank you.
Thank you.
And
Thank you. Oh, any comment?
If I may, Chair Mayron and Regent Verheulen, I just want to emphasize again, it's here we have a physician who's amazing in Duluth, who's been able to make that individual connection. And what if we could do that now for a system of millions of patients having those connections automatically? And how impactful would that be for the health of Minnesota to really extend patient care for cutting edge treatments across the state? Thank you.
And I'll build on that too, if I may, Chair Mayron and Regent Verheulen. These are two exceptional people. And I have a colleague that I've literally grown up with, and we were at Mayo together. And he said, by myself, I'm a really pretty good physician, but because of the colleagues and the integration and the support that I get, it makes me an excellent physician for the people I'm privileged to serve. And building that platform that takes us and makes us excellent is unbelievably important. I am so proud of Dr. Hoover here at the U and Dr. Perko up in Duluth, but we need to do better for everyone, and that's the vision of this.
Thank you. Regent Turner.
Thank you, Chair Mayron. Some of the comments I made, well, all of the comments I make may seem redundant because I said them all at the Academic Health Committee, but they bear repeating. I've seen in the last decade and a half traveled the state and seen how we've had diminishment of access and diminishment of, more and more people, if they do want this specialized care, have to come to the city. And I would speak on behalf of the elderly population all throughout Minnesota and a lot of our rural communities that to ask them to drive 150 miles for something is just impossible. How many stories have I heard of, Mom can't do that? And then also the fact that it is so important as you get older to be surrounded by your community, that your healing process is better. And speaking with rural nurses, that whole community is a whole different level than a nurse like I am in the twin, because patients that come in, they're related or they know somebody or know, everybody is connected. And that puts a whole different importance on us being able to expand healthcare in the rural, well, I would say rural America, but we're only concerned with Minnesota right now. But we could be a model for everyone else. That being said, please address some of the concerns. I've heard, well, what if you've got a Fairview hospital and 17 minutes away is an Essentia hospital? Are we going to expect some consolidation and closures? Not that I would advocate, because 17 minutes is 17 minutes when you're having a heart attack. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Yeah. So could you address that just to calm, and, because that would involve loss of jobs, et cetera? So if you'd address that for the
Chair
audience.
Mayron and Regent Turner, thank you very much for that question. I think the facilities you're talking about is a Fairview facility in Hibbing and Essentia Health facility in Deer River. I think, as I mentioned yesterday, what we have to look is the other side of Deer River, because it's 70 miles to the next place and that way. So that's an additional 17 minutes, perhaps when you've already driven 60 minutes to get where you want to be. The challenge that we have, particularly in rural Minnesota, is that we don't have too many facilities, is that we don't have enough. The challenge isn't that we have too much care. The challenge is we don't have enough. I think the opportunity to combine the efforts of those facilities up there and get better behavioral health services, better specialty service, far outweighs any advantages that you would get from consolidation. And so that's our vision.
Thank you.
Thank you, Regent Turner. Regent Hipsch.
Thank you, Chair Mayor. Thank you for that great video and great report. You know, coming from rural, rural is different than the city. I mean, it's harder to deliver medicine out there and you know, but I mean, the great things that we can do in rural Minnesota when we have good health care is amazing. It's going to be amazing. And so I thank you for that. You know, you're not going to grow a lot of corn in Minneapolis, but we still need health. You know, we still need corn here. So, I mean, it's like, and you can't, so, you know, I mean, but it is different. It's more expensive, you know. It's closer, everything's closer to home. You know everybody. There's an old joke that if you miss church, you get 3 get well cards. And that's kind of the truth, you know. And so we just have to keep going on this. This is, you know, everybody's been saying for so long, we have to improve rural health care. You guys are doing something, so thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Chair Mayor. And then
Yes.
Here's what I'd like to say to that, because quality health care is a challenge no matter where you are. But I think one of the things that's inspirational to our team is that they recognize the obligation that they have. If you're here in the Twin Cities, if you don't like the care you're getting, you can go someplace else. If you're in Aurora, Minnesota, if you don't like the care you're getting, you can go someplace else, but it's a long ways away. What I've told my colleagues is there's no pride to be the choice of care for people that don't have choice. We have an ethical responsibility to deliver the best care they can possibly get, as close as we possibly can to home. Because for them to go someplace else for the care it's burden enough to get care sometimes. If you have to travel a long ways, that only increases the burden. And sometimes people make a different choice between the burden and the care.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Regent Tad Johnson.
Thank you. I missed your presentation at Academic Health because I was on the equally dynamic audit committee. But anyway.
For your service, yeah.
It was a thriller.
You're welcome. But I was actually born at St. Mary's Hospital, which evolved into Essentia. In 1957, there was the Catholic Hospital, St. Mary's, and the Protestant Hospital, St. Luke's, where I now go for some of my care. But anyway, my mother lived into her 90s and was very well cared for at Essentia until she had to go to hospice. But I just want to say, as a Duluthian, the community is very excited about this partnership. And I don't know if you went through this at the Academic Health Committee or not, but I'm just curious, and maybe this is premature, but I'm curious what next steps are.
Well, we're continuing. Thank you very much, Chair Mayer, and then Regent Johnson. We're still working. There's a lot of steps along the way. I'll let President Cunningham here talk about the conversations we're having with Fairview. We hope those conversations can progress. This is not something we're going to give up on easily.
Chair Mayron and Regent Johnson, as I mentioned before, I think we need a reset. We need a reset for how we deliver medical education in the state. We have a duty as the only public medical center in the state, and we, combined are talking about the potential impacts of healthcare not only on millions of Minnesotans, but also on the future of whether folks all across these places in the state have healthcare providers, even separate from the facilities we're talking about. Every health system we've talked to understands that 70% of the people that are working in their hospitals, no matter where they are in Minnesota, receive their care with us. And so, when I got here to Minnesota, I heard very clearly the university needs we need a new solution. The governor's task force said, pointed out many, many issues and problems there were. And what I heard was President Cunningham, please help come to us with a solution. And so we have thought out of the box and tried to really think about, when some things are stuck here and there, how do we really just think about a new vision and a broader vision forward? And I know there's many good healthcare leaders in the state, and we have longtime partnerships, and I think good leaders are always interested in thinking about what the best thing is for patients and how we can really do something transformative together. And so we look forward to those ongoing conversations for which we think that there's many opportunities still to have good conversations with both our longtime partners, as well as with the health experts across the state. And most importantly, we're having this as a public conversation because this will impact the public. No matter what we do, will impact patient care and health and discovery and treatment across the state. So there's many next steps.
And Chair Mayer and Regent Johnson, if I could add to that, Regent Wheeler and I had an opportunity to serve on the Governor's Task Force, and the first conclusion of the Governor's Task Force was the status quo isn't getting us where we need to go. And if we want to stay where we are right now, that's not a bright future for the University of Minnesota or for the people that we're privileged to serve. If you want something different, you have to do something different. And I think President Cunningham here can tell you what other academic healthcare centers have done to move along this path as well.
Chair Mayron and Regent Johnson, I'd love to build on that. Thank you so much, Dr. Herman. You know, one of the other things I brought to you here when I sat here, thank you, Regent Kanyanya, a year ago today at this side of, but I don't know that I want to be on this side of the horseshoe that much, although always perhaps with Dr. Herman, is, you know, an outside perspective on healthcare delivery and on university academic health, you know, from a view of leadership, you know, nationally across the country. I am part of the National Academy of Medicine. I speak with leaders across the country who understand academic healthcare. And, you know, with that, what I can tell you is over the past, healthcare isn't staying in the same place. It's not in the same place it was in the 90s when, you know, our last agreements really sort of came to fruition here. They've moved along across the country, everywhere in the country. And across the country, many university and academic health centers have moved to try to do what we're proposing here. So really we're copying great ideas by others, right? Why reinvent the wheel? Of having a more integrated system. So just to emphasize, what we're not proposing here is a new partnership where Dr. Herman says you do X and then we say university, you give Y. We're not proposing that. We're proposing an integrated system where we're all rowing in the boat together. The physician groups, you know, the university and the health system towards a bright future. That type of model is where the country, many centers are working to go across the country. There's all tweaks on what that integration looks like in different places, but I'll give you some examples of places you might not have heard of. But, you know, University of Pennsylvania, Hershey Healthcare in Pennsylvania, Ohio State, Michigan, Emory, Duke, all of the California academic health systems all have moved towards a more integrated, not transactional model, like the one that we're talking about here. So as we look there, and when I ask, we have excellent healthcare experts, and we've asked others around the country, and when we ask them, we don't know of any academic entity or health system that is trying to move back to a 1990s model of transactions and excessive, you know, many contracts and many MOUs. The market is too tight and too complicated. An integrated solution is a more modern solution. And one of the things we're hoping to do here for Minnesota is move us to a new age of transformative healthcare that really is in keeping with what many other people across the country have learned works better for patients and for their communities. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Regent Farnsworth.
Thank you, Chair Mayron. Thank you, President Cunningham and Dr. Herman for the presentation. Now, I feel like I have to say, given Regent Tad Johnson's remarks, as the current chair of the Audit and Compliance Committee, I was also in that meeting, and because I was in that engaging and timely meeting, I watched the other committee meeting footage last night on YouTube to catch up. And so thank you, Chair Wheeler of the Academic Health Committee for that discussion yesterday. And I think it's also just because of what President Cunningham was just speaking to, it's important that we have a public conversation about the public nature of this topic. So I'm glad it's been brought back to this meeting today, because I think it's clearly of high importance to be talked about multiple times in our week. So I know that, you know, there's been it's been a very dynamic situation. There's been lots of things, that I'm even reading about, and I know the public is reading about in the newspapers, and that's, I think, part of the inherent messiness and engagement of a really important, bold thing that's happening, and that's just natural when things like this happen. So I'm glad we're continuing to discuss that as a board. Wanted to kind of speak more to the public from at least my remarks and my standpoint, that certainly as a member of this board continuing to pay attention to this issue. Also, personally, as someone who currently gets their primary care from our mHealth Fairview arrangement as a patient, I'm interested in having integrated care and that kind of model. Now, the other part of this is probably sharing too much, but the other part of my insurance is North Memorial. So if I'm ever in a crisis, I'm going to Nurse Mary. She knows that. But anyways, the point being is that I see this and feel this very much from a personal and governance professional lens here. And so look forward to future conversations on this, again, in this very public topic that relates very much to the public health, public nature, public well-being of our state. So just wanted to add my voice, no questions really, but just comments, not being a member of the Academic Health Committee, so wanting to take advantage to speak a little bit to it here. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Regent Farnsworth. Regent Kenyanya, if you could bring us home, and then we'll move on to the next agenda.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I promise no HIPAA disclosures. I suppose it's not a violation if you disclose.
That's right.
Yeah, all right, fair enough. Thank you, Madam Chair. A question and then a comment. I won't echo all the others, but I have the same sentiments. Thank you both for being here. This one might be for you, President Cunningham. If I'm a Minnesotan and I'm thinking, I don't go to Essentia and I don't go to mHealth Fairview, why does this matter to me and why should I be excited about this?
Chair Mayron, Regent Kenyanya, I thank you. So no matter where you get your care in the state of Minnesota, you depend on the university, a strong University of Minnesota medical school. And I encourage you, no matter where you get your care in Minnesota, to ask where your doctors have trained. And in every one of those health systems, they will say that 70% of them have trained at the University of Minnesota. Also, if you need life-saving treatment like that bone marrow transplant, you need the University of Minnesota to be able to continue to have a thriving medical school, to be able to develop the kinds of treatments that we developed here over time. So in addition to the individual care and patient relationships, we also, whether you get your care at Health Partners or at CentraCare, you probably interact with our clinical trainees from the University of Minnesota and are working, who then were more likely to potentially stay and live in the area that you live in to be able to continue to provide care. So this will impact all of Minnesota. If I may add one other comment, Regent Kenyanya and Chair Mayron, there has been many years of dynamic and even recent news, but what I really want the public to focus on now is this idea that we have in front of you a good idea? Is it the best idea we have for how we would transform healthcare in the state? And I think that's really should be the focus of our current conversation, and how can all the great leaders work together on what we could do together, which would be how to provide great care for the state. Is this the best idea? And how, if so, how can we come together and to achieve it collectively?
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, President Cunningham. That's very helpful, very insightful. And again, I just want to highlight the rural aspect of it. I'm a UMD alum, so I had a chance to spend time up there and, know the Essentia system. And Regent Hipsch, sees me as a city kid, but my folks come from somewhere that would make Perm look like New York City, So I invite you to come to Kisii, Kenya with me, and you'll see what rural life really is like. But it does remind me of when I was younger visiting. They were telling me there's a hospital right next to my grandfather's land. They're telling me how my grandfather gave up. It's built on our land, right? And I was like, how much did we sell it for? Like, how much did they rent it for? And he's like, No, and I was younger, and I was like, why would we do that? And they're like, well, because we needed a hospital. You know, and I think I just couldn't, you know, you take some things for granted, but it just does show you, you know, they say a healthy person has many hopes and dreams, a sick person has one. You know, so what we're doing here, it's so important, and I want to thank you both for the leadership, and I think we're all behind this. Thank you.
Thank you very much for an excellent presentation, excellent question by my colleagues. We look forward to the continued reading this chapter and the next chapter and the next chapter. Very excited about what you all have worked on and worked so hard on with your team. Thank you. We will now move to the next item, which is action on the University Performance and Accountability Report. Before we move to a vote, President Cunningham and Provost Croson, would you please share an overview of any pertinent changes since this last came before the board in December? Regent Cunningham's going to start us off, but she's locating her remarks on it.
I am. Yeah. Provost Croson, I'm going to let you start.
Thank you, President Cunningham, Chair Mayron, members of the board. I'm sorry I couldn't be with you in person today, but thank you for all the kind words and recognition. We seek your approval of the University Performance and Accountability Report, which we presented and reviewed with you in draft form at your December meeting. Since that time, final proofreading has resulted in small corrections and clarifications, each of which has been outlined in the docket. We've also included peer institution graduation rate comparisons for each campus, which was made available between the December and today's meeting. I want to repeat my thanks and acknowledgement to the multiple units that worked together to produce this document, especially colleagues in University Relations, the Office of Institutional Analysis, and the President's and Provost's Office. Chair Mayron, members of the board, President Cunningham, and I recommend the University Performance and Accountability Report for your approval.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the resolution related to the University Performance and Accountability Report?
So moved.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on this item? Regent Farnsworth.
Thank you, Chair Mayron, and thank you to everyone who has a role in putting this together, Provost Croson, President Cunningham for bringing it to us, and then University Relations and everyone. More so just a question for clarification, and I'm making sure this isn't spelled out in the docket first before I ask it. I see that this report is provided to the Minnesota legislature as required by the University of Minnesota Charter. Basically what I'm getting at is I think this is helpful. I think it's a great snapshot for the university. What is its, like, how is it operationalized after it leaves us? I know it gets transmitted over to you know, what I just read about the legislature. What does that look like? I think it's a lot of work. And so I'm just curious how it's used after that, because I know this has come before us since I've been on the board and we pass it, and I'm not sure what happens after that. So if someone could shed light on that, I would love that. Thank you.
Anyone, can either of you enlighten us on that?
Provost Croson, perhaps you can speak to the history.
Of course. So previously, before the Impact 2025 strategic plan, this accountability report, which is legislatively required, was very long, very detailed, not very accessible. Part of the transition when you approved the 2025 strategic plan was to merge the updating of the strategic plan, reporting out on the metrics from the plan with the accountability report. So that is now our document. It lives, of course, we send it to the legislature as required, but it lives on our website. The data in it is used for various press releases, notifications of accomplishments, all kinds of things, as well as internally as we think about what we've accomplished in the last 5 years in this case, and what we have next to do. So I think the relevant discussion moving forward is going to be when the Maroon, Gold, and Bold strategic plan is launched, how will we utilize the reporting on that plan as an accountability report. And I think that'll be the discussion moving forward. I hope that's responsive.
Do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, just
and
a
then
really-
I had a follow-up question.
Yeah, really brief follow-up. And thank you, Provost Croson, for that. I think that's helpful. Just thinking about, for instance, when we have when you go to a legislative committee meeting, they have that metal thing that stretches out with all the different handouts in it. I mean, if it isn't already, I think this should be as part of the record every time we have a committee hearing. Maybe I've just missed it in the past, references to it in our testimony, but I just want to make sure that all the work that goes into this is visibly seen in as many different ways as possible. So that would be the only thing I have to say. Nothing negative at all, just wanting to make sure that we get the most bang for our buck, if you will, from this. So thank you.
Provost Croson, do you have any sense or feedback that you've gotten once it hits the steps of the legislature as to what they do with it at that point in terms, or any input that they've provided regarding the report once they get it? The question is, what do they do with it? Hopefully it doesn't go into a cabinet and nobody ever looks at it, that someone is reviewing it, and more importantly, that it is providing them the information that they want about the university.
Yeah, Chair Mayron, Regent Farnsworth, that's a great comment. I would have to consult with my colleagues in government relations about exactly how legislators use it. I will say that the feedback we got very early when we started with this format is that this was a miles improvement over the previous format, which, as I mentioned, was very cumbersome and long and very text heavy. But I do think that understanding how this current version is being used will help us to shape what these reports look like moving forward. So I appreciate the feedback.
Okay. All right. Any other questions or discussion before we take on the motion? All right, it's been moved and seconded. If there are no other questions or comments, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say no. The motion is approved. We will now hear an update on the work of the System Optimization Working Group. With us today are three co-chairs of the working group: Lori Carroll, Chancellor of the Rochester campus; Mary Holtz-Claus, Chancellor of the Crookston campus; and Ra Singh, Vice Provost and Dean for Undergraduate Education on the Twin Cities campus. If the group, and I understand Chancellor Holtz-Claus is on virtually, if you would like to proceed.
Chair Mayron, Regents, we're very pleased to provide an update on the progress of the System Optimization Working Group. On a very different weather day back in July, you prioritized system optimization, and the President charged this working group in October. And in this presentation, we'll summarize our activities to date and share our planned next steps. The group includes leaders from many key areas of our University of Minnesota system: the graduate schools, student affairs, research and innovation, undergraduate education on the Twin Cities campus, finance and operations, and each of the greater Minnesota campuses. These leaders have differing perspectives on system-wide challenges and opportunities, and yet we are united in our strong commitment to an enhanced future state. I'll pause for you to read this goal, please. You see, the potential scope of this group was vast. So we began by narrowing the focus. With input from NASH, the National Association of Higher Education Systems, and system design expert Tom Fisher, the group engaged in several robust discussions to come to consensus on this narrowed goal, focused on enhancing the student experience. We're focused on what's best for learners. It's important to note the items that are out of scope for this working group: system-wide admissions, the new system-wide strategic plan, and PEAK. Other groups are taking the lead on those topics. And my colleague online will continue.
Chair Mayron and members of the Regents, as Chancellor Carroll had indicated, our working group has focused on the student and the student experience. Among our objectives is to identify possibilities for curricular coherence, thus ensuring our curriculum is well organized and thoughtfully designed with all of its parts. For instance, content, learning objectives, and looking for unnecessary gaps or redundancies. Curricular coherence is particularly important for our students so they can move seamlessly from undergraduate programs to professional and graduate studies, and for our undergraduate students who want to take classes on other campuses. Other objectives our group honed in on was to focus on operational efficiency and transformational cooperative initiatives across the University of Minnesota system. We thought this would enhance the student experience regardless of a student's home campus, while recognizing and respecting the distinctiveness of each of our campuses. That enhancement may also be possible by the removal of barriers as well as new shared ventures. We suggest the idea of systemness is enhanced if the work focuses on the recognition of the value provided by the University of Minnesota, not only to our students, faculty, and staff, but other stakeholders, including the state and business and industry partners. Next slide, please. We asked some members of the task force, as well as leaders across the system, to give us examples where systemness is currently working well. The characteristics of effective systemness included regular mechanisms for communication that might be in the form of meeting updates, visits, or written information. Regardless of the media and news, systemness worked because there was intentionality for interaction. Systemness also worked better when individuals or units or campuses knew there were resources to help them, they knew who to contact, and when they reached out, there was a timely response. At times, it was noticed this relationship was enhanced through service level agreements in place so that each party understood for what they could seek assistance and what the level of service response should be. So as a quick summary of this slide, systemness works best when all understand their role and responsibility to each other, and there is intentional communications. Next slide, please. While we asked what was going well, we also tried to discover what were some of the barriers to systemness. 5 themes emerged that included structural and organization barriers. For instance, structural barriers might be departmental divisions that create silos where information doesn't readily flow, and organizational barriers such as our policies, our procedures, and communication channels that may not be designed to facilitate smooth collaboration across different parts of the university system. Lack of communication and coordination across the system, as you see, was a theme. This might be a lack of clear information sharing, inconsistent messaging, and poor coordination, which could lead to confusion, duplication of efforts, and unfortunately, maybe some missed opportunities. And cultural relationship barriers also emerged as a theme when things didn't work very well. The cultural barriers, for instance, might be different ways various campuses or units handle issues, and relational might be related to interpersonal dynamics, such as not knowing one another and thus perhaps not trusting each other. Many elements where systems did not work were also related to resource and incentive barriers, including for successful learning. Some of these barriers might be, for instance, insufficient access to technology, tutoring services, mental health support, etc. And system inequities and access issues across the system emerged as the theme. Now my colleague, Dr. Raj Singh, is going to share with you operational and transformational ideas that the group is currently exploring.
Thank you, Chancellor Halsklaus, Chair Mayron, members of the board. The work group has been brainstorming possible ideas that would move the needle on systemness. What we have on this slide is a list of ideas that we consider operational. And I apologize for the busy slide with lots of stuff there. We had more ideas than real estate. I want to emphasize that we have not prioritized these ideas. In fact, it is possible that as we discuss further and get input, some of these ideas might not even survive, and others will get added for sure. The first on our list is a suggestion to align the academic calendars on our 5 campuses, including all registration, drop, withdraw deadlines, etc. It might allow us to give a fall break and potentially end the fall semester early on the Twin Cities campus. It will help students take classes on any campus they want, irrespective of their home campus, and also ease transfers among campuses. Which brings us to the second idea. We should remove barriers and make it easier for students to transfer, that is, change their home campus. In addition, it should be fairly easy for students to take and transfer courses across our system. Every attempt should be made to communicate these options to students in an intentional and a very clear way. Third, we cannot have optimal systemness until we all know about the resources available to all stakeholders. We suggest that we create and share a transparent inventory of all support resources at our campuses. Fourth, whenever we are establishing a new center or an institute, we suggest that all 5 campuses should be considered. Of course, the centers should be open to all faculty in honor systems. Fifth, all scholarships advertised or publicized as the university scholarships should be accessible to students on all campuses. We should also consider raising additional philanthropic dollars and scholarships at the system level and make them available to all students from all the campuses. Sixth, we have many officers and personnel with system-wide responsibility. However, it's not clear to the folks at the system campuses, and sometimes even to the folks themselves, that they have who has and who does not have system responsibility. We suggest that these should be documented, and this information about system responsibilities should be clearly disseminated all over. Seventh, students today use a schedule builder to find courses. Currently, they have to intentionally go to a separate page or a separate website for each campus and check out the available courses. We suggest making this a lot easier by displaying courses from all campuses in a unified way so the students can find what they need very easily. Sometimes our email addresses create unnecessary barriers. We should consider, with the help of IT, to just giving everybody a .umn.edu email address so that we can get rid of the d.umn.edu or the crk.umn.edu, etc. I'm getting close to the end. Given that all the students get the same University of Minnesota degree, the alumni of the same University of Minnesota, why can't we have a system-wide alumni association and build system-wide alumni relations? 10th, we as a group were very concerned with the difficulty in accessing student records across the system. It should be easy to check a student's record, especially if they're being considered for a transfer to a different campus. Next, we would like to bring attention to our communications. We should ensure that we don't use the shorthand of saying University of Minnesota when in fact we mean the University of Minnesota Twin Cities. University of Minnesota should be used only when we refer to it as the system. And here I'll confess that I routinely make that mistake. The penultimate suggestion on this slide is about clarity of system strategy. We believe that each and every campus should know whether they are mostly responsible for thriving on their own, or is it the responsibility of the system to ensure that none of our 5 amazing ships sinks? This is especially important in today's environment where large flagship campuses like the Twin Cities campus are thriving, while small regional campuses all over the country are having and are facing significant challenges. Lastly, the work of this committee will end in perhaps a few months. We suggest that we work towards a culture where students, staff, faculty, administrators identify barriers to systemness and work together towards cooperative arrangements. Before I hand it over to Chancellor Carroll, I would like to again emphasize that none of these ideas are prioritized in any way, and that we should remember that. Chancellor Carroll, please.
Thank you. our colleagues who are facilitating the system-wide strategic planning process are mining the collective brilliance of the University of Minnesota system. We expect their process to lead to transformative ideas. Many of our ideas are operational, and even those on this slide are designed to enable the transformational ideas yet to come. The three ideas on this slide do intersect. So for us to successfully implement cooperative academic ventures across the system, expected to be transformative, there are structural, cultural, and financial barriers that need to be addressed. The first two ideas hold the potential to do just that, making possible the transformative academic cooperative ventures sure to emerge, the third idea. In the University of Minnesota's organizational culture, a shift to a widespread shared understanding of the value and potential of optimized systemness could be fostered by structural changes. As has been mentioned, and of course we're all well aware, unlike other higher education systems across the country, we have no separate system office with individuals whose primary, if not singular, roles and responsibilities are to attend to the entire system. The first tentative idea is about structure. Might we have a system collaborative of individuals with regular connection points to generate shared understanding and to address emerging challenges? And within that system collaborative, might we have a rapid innovation team? It could be designated to move key academic ventures forward. They might conduct quickly cost-benefit analyses, refine designs to optimize impacts, and navigate impediments so the best ideas take months rather than years to implement. Though challenging, the second idea seems mandatory for any new transformative cooperative ventures to be implemented, and that will likely necessitate some tough decisions about what not to keep doing. The system collaborative could vet and prioritize cooperative academic ventures for the president and her cabinet to consider, or those might be identified through the system-wide strategic plan. So far, this work has been a lot of fun. It's been energizing. So we think about solutions, not just long-standing challenges. And we're using evidence and our collective imagination to envision an optimal system of higher education. Just this week, we held our second in-person retreat to begin our prioritization of the ideas, integrating stakeholder feedback from a recent survey and developing criteria for analysis of the ideas. That process of analysis, input, and discernment of prioritized recommendations will continue over the coming months. As we move toward the June completion of a final report for President Cunningham, our very next step is to welcome your input.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. President Cunningham, would you like to add something before we open it for discussion?
Thank you, Chair Mayron, and with much thanks to the committee. So, this work is just tremendously exciting. We have many assorted crises of the day all the time, but I really want our board to know, with much thanks to the groups on the ground, that we are really moving forward ahead with what I heard in July, I think on my 10th day, that was really important to the board and to the state of Minnesota, which is how we figure out how we have our 5 individual campuses and how we work together as a collective system best. I think the term systemness somewhere came up along that and has now entered the colloquial use amongst our teams. And with it, I found there's many times where people say, well, this is an example of how systemness is actually working and we didn't know. And this is an example of maybe what we should think about. And now there's sort of a place to put those thoughts of how it may work about together. This is certainly just the beginning. I'm sorry if anybody gave you the impression this was going to be over in a few short months. Vice Provost Singh. So, this is the beginning. There's the beginning of these ideas coming forward. There obviously will be much more work to be done. Some of the interesting things I found in here is perhaps many of you thought some of the things that they brought up as suggestions were already in existence around the university, and certainly that sort of cohesiveness does not exist. And so there's some on many issues, on many other things, it is existing and working well. And so it's a real opportunity to just surface these things, and then they'll have to do the hard work to think about which of these things, each of these things, ideas, I just want to point out, would take, a working group and deep operational, work and time to move forward. Some things that might be as simple of a thought to my naive concept as a simple academic calendar, of course, are incredibly complicated and maybe met with complete shock that could ever be possible. But I think certainly all of these things have potential and possibility. All of them would need feasibility analysis and cost analysis and understanding, and then prioritization of what we want to do and how we want to be. But I think the group's goals are clear. We have heard the charge and are moving ahead on it in how can we take the 5 campuses that we have and make sure that we're working cohesively together for the benefit of our students and for the benefit of the public. So I really have a lot of thanks. The team has done tremendous work in bringing it just to the state, and we welcome your feedback.
Thank you. Before I open it up to comments by my fellow regents, I have a question, and actually for President Cunningham, and then just a comment. I want to know if systemness has made it into the Scrabble dictionary yet.
I'm using it. I'm using it. There's a lot of letters there.
Yeah, there you go. All right. And separate from my comment, the operational ideas, I recognize no priority, but they're fantastic. I mean, some of them just seem so obvious to the reader, but you can see how, whether individually or collectively, how if implemented, at what point in time could be really have such an impact on the university and our belief that this is a system and not 5 individual campuses. So, and I appreciate the reminder that each one of them, they just don't happen overnight. You just can't pull a lever and the calendar exists. I appreciate that there are many steps to implementation, and appreciate the reminder of that this is not something that can be done overnight. But I just think they're terrific, the ideas that you have already surfaced. So thank you for that. All right, Regent Verhalen.
Thank you, Chair Mayron, and I echo Regent Chair Mayron's comments. It's such a wonderful opportunity, I think, for the university to take a step back and look at how we talk about ourselves, to think about how it's perceived by others. And to that end, item 8 on your list about removing campus-specific email domains is something that I don't think ever came to the front of my mind, but really is something that would remove some of those even perspective barriers. And so I offer as an augmentation onto that, also looking at rethinking about when you go to www.umn.edu, not having it automatically redirect to twincities.umn.edu. Those kinds of simple things where you can then communicate outwardly that systemness from the start when someone goes to that website, a prospective parent, a prospective student, a community member, to show that there is that cohesiveness. And then the system-wide alumni relations and association, I think, is such a great opportunity to bring alumni together, because we do have alumni all over the place. And just because one went to Duluth and one went to the Twin Cities campus, but they may live in the same city, they might never know of each other's alumni event, and thinking through it in more of that cohesive way, while you still have your Duluth alumni and your Twin Cities alumni kind of subgroups within that, but bringing those opportunities to be together, I think, is really great. So thank you.
Thank you. Regent Davenport.
Thank you, Chair Mayron, and thank you for the work and the presentation. I think there's low-hanging fruit here, building on what you said, Regent Verhalen. And I appreciate the solutions focus. And I want to draw from our last conversation about integrated healthcare and make a parallel to this work that you're doing, because I think there's true integration and transactional. And so it's a question or just wondering about, are you feeling the tension between systemness and autonomy in the discussions? Do you anticipate that? Do you see that as something to work through as you build this, I want to call it integrated higher ed system? But that's something that I'm wondering about. If it's there, are you feeling it? Well, do you think you can address that? So,
Chair Mayron, Regent Davenport, I think philosophically that parallel is a really important one to highlight as we talk about the focus on patients and their needs and meeting unmet needs. Here we talk about the learners and their needs and how optimized systemness might meet their needs. And so that is the lens that connects us and that provides a pathway to that integrated approach to systemness.
Thank you. Regent Turner.
Thank you, Chair Mayron. When you were going through your 13 objectives, yes, I just, in my mind, I just kept replaying. Each one was like, I was envisioning the decreased anxiety of our students with each and every one. I just have a tendency I consider them my patients in the higher ed world. And so I appreciate that it was so student-focused, because every single one of those, the way we do it now, is a source of anxiety that shouldn't be there. My other question, I saw the word fund or new funds. So here's a maybe naive question. Can we take the money from the way we do it now and just transfer it over to the new way, or isn't it that easy? I'm serious.
May I, Chair Mayron and Regent Turner, it's a really good question. So whatever we try to do that's new at the university, we will have to try to figure out how that fits into, budgeting and needs and funds allocation. And so, while nothing is ever simple, everything is possible. So if we're going to do any new initiatives, EVP Goldman and I will have to sit, along with academic leaders and consider how we may move forward with funding, new items and new opportunities. And this will be true for the strategic planning process as well. We're going to be doing strategic planning, and some of those strategic planning things certainly may have to do with systemness. Some other ones might have to do with other things. And then as a university, we'll have to work collectively to figure out how we fund those new initiatives. And with that, we'll also always have to figure out as we move towards new things and bring along the university into a new path, which things are we not going to bring along with us on that journey so that we can take the resources we have and move along. So nothing is easy when it comes to funding, but things are certainly possible. And if we don't continue, as we talked about yesterday, to move to the future with good ideas, we limit ourselves. Also, when we do things really well, potentially there's new, that brings funding opportunities as by, both increased enrollment or increased attraction, or a system that works really well for students is a system that has a really good reputation, that is serving people in a better way. So I think there's opportunities to enhance, as we enhance what we do for the right reasons for our students, there's opportunities there. And if I can speak to one of the other questions earlier on around, I think it was around that maybe the emails, but in a broader way, one of the tensions that you're also feeling here, and I think maybe it was Regent Davenport, is, and I'm not suggesting we're going to create a system office, but we're trying to do a system thing without a system function. So we have chancellors, of which I am one, and then we have goals of systemness for which we are also trying to do. But right now what we have is the resources for all of those are all within the individual systems. So one of the things that's coming up here that that the chancellor mentioned is, so how do we then, without duplicating things, come up with a collaborative or a function, or how are we going to do the things that need a system level focus while using the resources of the individual campuses we have, or figuring it out in some other way. And that's a tension that certainly exists there. So, I get double duty for that, which I'm sure is built into all of my benefits for as we're managing both of those, right?
All right, well, thank you very much. Great report.
Thank you.
Lots of great thoughts. I'm going to move us along because we still have yet another substantial presentation on the farm initiative.
My thoughts weren't that good anyway.
All right. I'm sure they were. Our next item is an update on the farm initiative, which stands for the Future of Advanced Agricultural Research in Minnesota. To provide this update, we have Shashank Priya, Vice President of Research and Innovation, and Brian Burr, Dean of the College of Food, Agricultural, and Natural Resources Sciences. As soon as you gentlemen are seated, if you could proceed.
Chair Mayron, it looked like it's coffee break, half the. No offense, guys.
I thought about that, but we're already at 11:45, and I'm going to keep moving us along. So if anybody needs coffee or a restroom break, run out and come back. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Mayron. Thank you, members of the board and President Cunningham. Actually, I'm very excited today for presenting this report. I'm joined here with my colleague Brian Burr, Dean of the College of Food, Agricultural and Natural Resource Science. We will provide you an update on this project, which is called Future of Advanced Agricultural Research in Minnesota, or FARM. And I'm here in the capacity as the chair of the Farm Oversight Committee that President Cunningham appointed in October of 2024. Dean Burr is also a member of this committee and very important functional leads on various subcommittees that are operating under this committee. And he has the true technical knowledge and depth that the farm needs in order to make a system-wide impact. As you know, the university is exploring the development of this project in the Broward County through a very large public-private partnership with the Riverland Community College, Hormel Foundation, the state, and hopefully many industry partners. This integrated complex should include world-class facilities as well as several hundred acres of field and land to support the mission, all while connecting to the broader goals of the system. I want to point out some numbers to put some context on why this project is so exciting. About 864 million people today face severe food insecurity in the world. And this is the number just for year 2023. Every day, about 6,000 children die due to the malnutrition. And about 6.8 million US households miss meals or have lower intake. And these numbers indicate that we need to produce more food from the same area of land in a sustainable way that does not impact the environment. And this is where this project will deliver practical solutions for our farmers that they need today, and look for ideas and education that will allow them to maintain the cutting edge in food and agricultural economy of tomorrow. The next slide. Minnesota's ag and processing industries, as all of you know, contribute a large amount of economic impact, roughly about $106 billion annually. And they support roughly about 388,000 jobs in Minnesota. Minnesota also has about 26 million acres of agricultural land, which is about 51% of the state's total land area. And so this area is such a critical for our state's economy and our social well-being. Farmers in our agricultural industry today face real challenges in order to grow more crops in a sustainable way due to the climate impact and the impacts that we are seeing in the water system and changing and fluctuating weather conditions. Leadership for Minnesota's industry is critical more than ever, because as the global population continues to rise, and it's expected to reach 9.3 billion by 2050, we estimate that the farmers and industry will need 60% more food globally by that time in order to provide food for all. At the same time, there is a lot of environmental stress on our lands and water, which creates a grand challenge on how to grow these crops in a sustainable and protected way. On the slide 3, we point out a few more things that make impact for our community here in the Broward County. Farm is very focused on incorporating the most cutting-edge technological areas. Actually, our committee had a lot of discussions about how innovations that we are seeing in many diverse fields, such as artificial intelligence, robotics, machine learning, etc., can be combined together to learn about the soil chemistry, water chemistry, the weather patterns, and the impacts that all these things collectively have on the production of the crops. Our state request focuses on data sciences and AI and machine learning, and how these can be used in order to curate the data sets through the sensory data that is collected through the drones and embedded sensors in the soil and water, and utilize it in order to guide the farmers. AI can determine the best time to plant the crop, how long these crops should stay in the field, when to harvest, and even where to sell for the best practices. It can also uncover links between diet and human health, helping us how plant and animal consumption impacts overall well-being. Investing in agricultural research and development in Minnesota is incredibly effective. And I didn't know about this number, but for every dollar invested in agriculture, there's a $40 return on that investment. And the reason for this is that our state soil is very rich and fertile. We have abundant water and very unique climate that amplifies with the power of innovation to provide the yield and productivity that we need from these farmlands. So over the next 10 years, farming will see a lot of unprecedented challenges, but there's also a lot of opportunities, as I pointed out, with the rise in global population. And we feel that this combination of diverse R&D efforts, such as genomics, data science, robotics, computational chemistry, metabolomics, and various other things, together with the right type of infrastructure in the Broward County, over a 1,400-acre land, will provide us all the solutions we need in order to de-risk for our farmers the capability to produce different kinds of commercializable crops that can feed, that can provide minerals and materials that are needed for the economic impact and social impact in our state. This site will also provide the opportunity to do longitudinal, long-term studies to understand the interconnectedness between environment, soil, food, water, animal, and human health. There's no other site in the world that has such an opportunity available to them before. This is very unique and very promising. And with that, I'll pass it on to my colleague, Brian.
Thank you, Vice President Priya. I'm Brian Board, Dean of the College of Food, Agriculture, and Natural Resource Sciences, that most of you probably know. I can't resist doing a relationship service announcement today, but for those of you who are celebrating with people, it's Valentine's Day. The patron saint of Valentine is beekeepers. You knew that? University of Minnesota lab does honey, and our, of course, floral and arboretum side does flowers. So if you ever wondered why people give sweets and flowers for Valentine's Days, it's because of beekeepers and bees as pollinators. So we always do fun things in CFANs. So remember that. You have a story. If you haven't gotten something, get something sweet and flowers and tell a story if you're late. So anyway, with that, we do a lot of interesting things in CFANs that are really exciting. And as Dr. Priya was saying, everything in agriculture is connected. Soil is connected to water, crop systems, animal health, ultimately, of course, affecting human health and the environment. And without the environmental health, we're not going to have a healthy agriculture nor healthy people. Advancing agricultural and food productivity and improve our environment and health requires controlled, long-term, integrated research and technical innovations and applications. No other research enterprise that we found in our feasibility study does the sort of work we're planning with Farm to connect together the environment, the production systems, the food systems, and human health truly bringing what the University of Minnesota has to offer to connect those dots across the system. Few businesses have that scope of enterprise to do that work. In doing so, we'll also de-risk farmers' adoptions of these technologies that in turn grow rural economies and improve farmer profitability. For broader society, our goal of net neutral environmental impact on our soil, water, and air improves both human and environmental health outcomes, and this impact goes beyond Minnesota. Minnesota just happens, if you look at the 45th parallel across the globe, contributes to about 50% relationship or consistency with that global band of all food production in the world. So what we do in Minnesota, if you think Europe, Eastern Europe, and so on, Asia, that's the production region of the world. What we do here in Minnesota truly does impact the rest of the world with our innovation as we go through this, and Farm hopes to advance that farther. Growing talent for agriculture and food systems is critical to our future success. We don't have as many people coming out of agriculture who think about agriculture coming forward, and so Farm offers an opportunity at the University of Minnesota to educate students and adult learners through extension as well as our class-based education programs. They'll receive state-of-the-art hands-on education in areas ranging from robotics to autonomous systems to data sciences and modern applications of renewable energy, mechanical and biological engineering, and animal crop systems management. Farm will also provide opportunities and partnerships we have with, of course, our system campuses, but also Riverland Community College in the Minnesota State System, other partners that we work with across Minnesota State System, as well as the Hormel Institute on the health aspects. And we expect to create collaborative educational and research programs, as well as host classes and symposia for external audience as well. And in today's world, the broader public is increasingly separated from our food sources and often have limited knowledge about how it's produced. Even though they have great interest in those practices and influence them through policy, they don't necessarily understand how science and technology hold potential to increase quality of food and bio-based products such as clothing, fuels, and biodegradable polymers and plastics, preserving and protect our environment from those consequences. And Farm will be open to public research and engagement to help the public learn how modern advances in technology are helping to assure safer, healthier food and environmental systems, as well as dialogue about food system alternatives and how they impact our lives and our environment. Through Farm, we envision providing a range of educational offerings for learners of all ages, and Farm will directly engage with 4-H and FFA students where they can interact with modern agricultural environment and be inspired to discover more about all aspects of agriculture. In addition, we'll provide support for industry and professional training for businesses in Minnesota to come in and participate in research as well as education, and hopefully advance our rural communities' economic development through those innovations. Some perspective on where Minnesota fits in this and kind of a why Minnesota part of this. The University of Minnesota is integral to Minnesota and the region's agricultural leadership. The reinvestment is part of our shared future. We're actually in this hub between several land-grant universities in the upper Midwest that's part of the agricultural experiment station system that works at a federal level to deliver research for different environments and areas by the work that we do jointly together. Our region's fertile soils and abundant water resources obligate us to contribute to the world's food supplies. Farm's unique location at the epicenter of the region gives us a valuable living laboratory to prove that we can develop productive agriculture and preserve and protect and actually improve our irreplaceable natural resources that enable that abundance. Quite naturally, our region's abundant resources grew a globally significant collection of Fortune 500 agri-food companies and a globally renowned land-grant system. And it is, again, our obligation to honor those abundant resources by working together to preserve and protect and enjoy the agricultural fruits of our environment. In regards to animal agriculture, many of you will know that we are a large animal agriculture producing state. We're ranked first in turkeys. We're ranked second nationally in hog production. We're listed as one of the top 10 dairy producing states. And similarly, our crop systems rank in the top 5 nationally, and our crop diversity is in the top 4. So we have a broad and extensive agricultural footprint that cuts across all types of crops and livestock. It's truly an amazing state, and it's due to our rich natural capital, as we call it. This natural capital of nature and the environment, combined with human ingenuity, generates about $112 billion in economic activity each year. And for animal agriculture, that generates $7.6 billion per year just in the production side of that. That's not including further processing, other activities associated with it, and $12 billion in crop production each year. Again, not including all the processing and materials and so on that come from that, and food that comes from that work. Beyond returns to agriculture, nearly 10% of total employment in the state of Minnesota stems from these industries. And in 37 counties, agriculture and food accounts for nearly a third of all employment. I will point out that in the counties, Hennepin County is, I think, the second-ranked employer in agricultural food systems. And General Mills and Cargill, of course, will do a lot to employ some people in Minnesota. So people often think of it as a rural-centric piece. It's actually a key part of our Twin Cities region's economics development as well. This ecosystem for farm to business commercialization gives us the opportunity to foster innovation so crucial for bridging the gap between academic or scientific discoveries and real-world applications. It enables collaboration between researchers, businesses, investors, and stakeholders to take novel ideas and transform them into marketable solutions. Honoring our land-grant mission and fueled by investments made generations ago, the University of Minnesota has been integral to Minnesota's agricultural leadership for 170 years. Reinvestment is now needed to strengthen the future for our food and agricultural economy. Again, Farm will foster a holistic, interdisciplinary approach rooted in modern practice, and the University of Minnesota, as you all know, does better than anyone else at this. We're currently ranked #1 in the nation for interdisciplinary science, and CFAN's founding mission include biologists, chemists, ecologists, engineers, plant scientists, animal scientists, food scientists, geologists, and even economists get to join in once in a while and all work on these challenges together, and we've been doing that for 170 years. It's an important part of our overall ecosystem of research in the state. Farm harnesses the breadth and depth of knowledge between the aspects I've talked about, but importantly, it serves as a nexus for the University of Minnesota, building on existing research, extension, veterinary medicine, the College of Biological Sciences, College of Science and Engineering, as well as CFAN's 10 research and outreach centers across the state, the St. Paul campus, and of course our system campuses in Crookston, Morrison, and Duluth. In each one of these, we already have existing academic or research partnerships, and again, this will facilitate further that connectivity and system arrangement with that. It does serve all of Minnesota, not just Mower County where it's located. Actually, Farm is both a place as well as an activity. The work we do in advanced agricultural research is a key part of that system. Our researchers today, for some context, work in outdated facilities where Norman Borlaug actually once walked the hallways almost 100 years ago now when he matriculated to the University of Minnesota. It's a great historical connection, but century-old buildings do not allow for the type of research Minnesotans expect from their land-grant university. To put a finer point on that, the University of Minnesota Planning and Management rates more than 3/4 of our food and agricultural research facilities on the St. Paul campus alone to be in poor and critical condition as they stand today. So we're at a crucial inflection point of agricultural research at the University of Minnesota. The university is already decommissioning livestock research facilities, and with an average age of 40+ years and in facilities that are used by livestock, that's a long time to have those facilities in operation. We continue to close facilities and will be unable to provide research and teaching in these core areas in the near future. We can continue on the path as we have been, or with farm strategic investments, we can lead agroecological innovation and discovery that fosters and continues economic growth, food abundance, and human and environmental health. As one of America's leading research universities, the University of Minnesota is uniquely positioned to serve this critically important purpose in a way companies, regional, and state governments simply can't do, and from a source that people trust in their food systems that are critical to their health and well-being. The agricultural and natural resources research at the University of Minnesota works directly with farmers, NGOs, companies, and government agencies on campus and at each of our 10 ROCs. This ranges from basic research to field trials with companies on new technologies for crop and livestock production. And this past year, our research and outreach centers alone had 42 independent research projects with private sector partners in the work that we do to serve the state. This one-of-a-kind enterprise with Farm will provide unique applications for other partners in collaborative and integrative research that this one-of-a-kind facility provides. To close, as the University of Minnesota embarks on its new system-wide strategic plan, Maroon, Gold, and Bold, it is crucial that FARM connects into and advances its strategic pillars. FARM aligns with the University of Minnesota's continued focus on interdisciplinary research, the system, along with our commitment to healthy outcomes across people, society, the environment, and food systems. FARM fits uniquely into the university's commitment to build a stronger bioeconomy as well. Having completed a feasibility study in 2021, we are now nearing the completion of pre-design study, which involved over 100 internal and external stakeholders in consultation and partnership to identify what the needs and opportunities were. This will include connecting to University of Minnesota campuses and priorities and plugging into and complementing our existing research and outreach centers. It's most critical to integrate FARM as a concept of advanced agricultural research as we revitalize and think about how it connects to the heart of our research and teaching enterprise on the St. Paul campus. FARM is a critical expansion of taking the foundational research from St. Paul's labs and intensive bioinnovation facilities to implementation by farmers and impacts in improving the environment in an accelerated way to feed the world facing climate change, rapidly depleting water resources, desertification of agricultural lands, and rapid population growth. To date, we've secured $60 million pledge from the Hormel Foundation to support FARM. We've acquired more than 1,300 acres of land in Mower County in which to base FARM, and the pre-design will catalyze our next phase of funding as we have a much clearer and compelling perspective on what the actual facilities are and what they hope to accomplish, and working with our public and private partners. With that, I'll turn it back over to Vice President Priya to close out. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Brian. So on this next slide, I first want to thank the members of my oversight committee members. Many of them are leaders and actually present in this room, and they have contributed very extensively in planning the next phase of this project. One of the next steps in this exciting project is to form an industry advisory board, because we feel like this will be a large public-private partnership, and we need to bring the industry on board. So with Brian and Steve Corkery, we are launching a phase to invite several of the companies that you know about to become a member of our advisory board and start to provide some insights and guidance. And as Brian mentioned, we are almost completing the pre-design phase, and we'll enter into the design process that will consider how this project is phased over time. Additionally, we will factor in the needs of broader bioinnovation research happening at the St. Paul campus, and also the agricultural, natural resource, and environmental research happening at the ROCs, and also the research and educational activities happening at our system campuses. And collectively, the information from all these different entities will be combined together to guide the process for the next phase of this project. We're also starting to think about in our committee a detailed operational and financial plan for the farm, the day-to-day operations, the research aspects, and the teaching aspects on a daily basis. A farm will operate as an agricultural enterprise, much like other farms are. So there is a financial model that is proven and evaluated, but we need to combine that model with the research and teaching financial models. For example, how the grants and contracts will come from different federal and state agencies, how the distribution of these funding will occur across the farm and other colleges and campuses, public and private partnership models, so different types of models such as membership-based or other ways, expected enrollments and tuition from these activities, professional certification, and other curriculum programs that will be developed. The farm financial model will include a full modeling of projected depreciation and obsolescence based upon the agroinformatics. Lastly, it's very critical that we include a very broad set of faculty, researchers, businesses, government agencies, and universities, both in the state of Minnesota, but also, as Brian pointed out, in a collection of Midwest states. And so we are thinking about developing a workshop later this year or early next year, which hopefully will bring together all the entities to combine their ideas and thoughts process together with us, and hopefully collectively emerge on how these collaborations can be set up. But this is very, very exciting part of our project. I think we have made great progress in the last 4 or 5 months. I would say that, Brian. And now we are actually starting to analyze this collective data to bring a much more broader spectrum of leaders around the universities to face this design phase of this project. So with that, we'll end our presentations and take questions. Thank you.
Thank you for a very, very robust presentation, very much appreciated, and very exciting as well. Regent Hipsch.
Thank you, Chair Mayor. Probably comes as no surprise I'm going to talk to this. Everybody knew that was going to happen, so I've had controlled exuberance here. This is kind of a meeting for Doug Hipsch today with rural health care and now this, how can you get any better than this? But, if you take a point and put it into Austin, Minnesota, and have a 400-mile radius, it covers almost all of North and South Dakota, all of Iowa into Kansas. It covers all the way to the Great Lakes. That's the heart of our production. And so the research and development we do there, we're going to be able to export to these other states if we do a nice job. And you know what? Texas A&M and Florida State and California, Davis, they're not doing research on Minnesota. It was -6 below yesterday. If we don't take care of this ourselves here, nobody else is going to help us. On my farms a few years ago, and it's come back again, I had a thing called bird flu, and you all read about it. It was devastating. And if it wasn't for the University of Minnesota, we're still #1 in turkey production in this state, and it's because of one place, the University of Minnesota. We should have lost that with the big bird flu epidemic we had in whatever it was, 2017, but we didn't. And it's because we had the University of Minnesota. So I can't speak. This is so important, not only for Cargill and General Mills, but there's a lot of small food companies that you've never heard of that are billion-dollar companies. Like in my hometown, we have Nutrisource dog food. We have Wiley Wallaby licorice, if you like that. We have Bongards cheese. We have a bunch of other stuff. These are, it's our whole economy, okay? So, and there's hundreds of towns like ours that depend on this. So it's a lot of money, but it's time. We have to do something. We haven't done anything forever. We've kind of just, did our business over at the CFANs and not asked for much for the last 100 years. And now it's time again. So it's time to go with this project. So thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Davenport.
Thank you, Chair Maron, and I just want to thank you for the work that you're doing and point out that this is a great example of collaboration with the 2 higher ed systems in the state. If you look at the slide on page 143, the ecosystem, and add to that all the farm business management programs and other programs that we work together on with them, we really do, as you say, Regent Hipsch, touch not just Minnesota, but really the whole Midwest. And so thank you for the continued work on that. And fast work, really. Higher ed's slow, but you've moved at a fair pace.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any other comments or questions? Oh, yes, from our president.
Chair Mayor, with many thanks again to the group. I know farm has been a concept that's been floating around now, I don't know, Brian, 10 years, right? So, what we've really asked for the board to know over the past, 8 months, in the fall, I asked these 2 leaders to come together and really take a look at this in a different way, to form a new committee, because this is bigger than, it's a big idea. It's bigger than CFANS. It's bigger than one of our colleges. It has to involve, and it does involve, it would touch across many of our colleges and across many of our campuses, and would impact our research outreach centers in many potential good ways. So we have to actually look at this as a system. And so with that, I've asked these 2 leaders and a committee to come and charged a committee to begin to look at this great concept and really look organizationally at what needs to go in, what is the feasibility, what really are the finances, and what are the partnerships that have to be done to bring it to fruition. And so with all of the enthusiasm over the concept over the past decade, it is a great concept, and it still has a long way to go before, as we understand the feasibility, the operations, and the next steps, and the partnerships that will be needed to bring it to fruition. So this group is working really hard, and they will be coming back with future reports as we progress on that, which is now happening even again at a bigger system level than was happening before, just so the board understands a little bit of the difference between how we were operating on it before and how we're planning to move forward with it now. So with much thanks, it is not only a school level thing, it must be a university level for the type of investments that we're talking about here and the impact for the state. This must be a university level initiative, and that is the way that this group is looking at it, with a lot of thanks for all the hard work.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, presenters. Very much appreciated. I know you'll be back.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. All right, this brings us to our committee business. Let's begin with the report of Academic Health Committee. Regent Wheeler, would you like to share your report?
Thank you, Chair Mayron. Special committee, or not so special committee, the Academic Health Committee did not consider any action items this month. We considered 2 items. The first was second part of a 4-part series, which the committee is learning about how the university is meeting the health needs across the state through academic and clinical partnerships. This one focused on the contributions of the University of Minnesota Rochester campus. As we heard from Chancellor Carroll, and we have all seen during our visits to University of Minnesota Rochester, the campus is well positioned, really well positioned to advance the goal of fostering a healthier Minnesotan. I'd encourage you all to watch the presentation to learn about the amazing alums who are doing what work they're doing, contributing so much to the dire need for talented and compassionate healthcare professionals. Second item was an update from President Cunningham and Ascension Health CEO Dr. David Herman on the bold vision for Minnesota healthcare. The rest of the board heard from them just recently, and I'll only add that there are clearly further steps in due diligence before this becomes a reality. The committee expressed intense enthusiasm about the vision, as we stated earlier. So as we hope that the continued conversations continue to move us forward. Thank you, Chair Mayron. That concludes my report.
Thank you. For the report of the Audit and Compliance Committee, Regent Farnsworth, please share your report with us.
Thank you, Chair Mayron. The Audit and Compliance Committee did not consider any action items this month. First, the committee heard about completed audit work performed by the university's appointed independent external auditor, Clifton Larson Allen, LLP, since the December 2024 meeting. 5 additional FY 2024 compliance audits and agreed-upon procedures and reports have been completed. I'm pleased to report that no findings or material weaknesses were identified. For our second item, the committee turned to FY 2025 and received an overview of the external audit plan. That plan will be used by Clifton Larson Allen when they complete the FY 2025 financial and compliance audits. In our final audit item, Chief Auditor Galswick provided the committee with a brief internal audit update, reporting that 27% of the outstanding recommendations rated as essential were resolved by university departments. This is lower than the expected implementation rate of 40% and a drop from October's 38% rate. However, it was noted that over half of the unresolved recommendations rated as essential are from audits receiving a first-time follow-up, and only 34% of all outstanding essential items are past due. An overall theme of our discussion was around the current government and higher education landscape. We found the topics the committee discussed yesterday very timely, especially the OMB Uniform Guidance Federal Compliance Audits, which test compliance with federal grant requirements. We will continue to engage with our external and internal auditors to ensure that the university continues to adapt to changing circumstances and meets all compliance requirements. Thank you, Chair Mayron. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Regent Farnsworth. For the report of Governance and Policy Committee, Regent Verheulen, if you could share your report with us.
Thank you, Chair Mayron. The Governance and Policy Committee acted on 2 items this month. The committee first voted to recommend adoption of the proposed amendments to the bylaws of the Board of Regents and the adoption of the proposed revisions to the Board of Regents Policy Code of Conduct for members of the Board of Regents as amended this morning. The amendments to both policies are the result of the comprehensive review process, previous discussions by the board, and the Governance and Policy Committee. Amendments to the bylaws include an updated process for requests to appear before the board, adjustments to allow for up to 2 vice chairs, updates to the standing agenda to align with best practices, tying the positions of secretary and treasurer to the staff positions held by those offices, and clarification of the responsibilities of the board chair, including codifying the duration of special committees. Based on feedback from Regents, the proposed updates to Code of Conduct for members of the Board of Regents have been updated since it was last reviewed in December. The changes that appear in the docket clarify definition language, move selected definitions into the sections where they actually apply, and added new parameters on when we as Regents can use the title of Regent, University Marks, or official letterhead when writing letters of recommendation, both within and outside the university. The committee also adopted 2 amendments to the language that had been included in the docket. You can see these amendments in the highlighted text in the additional handout that was provided to each of you. The highlighted language includes a new provision that would allow the board chair to designate another regent to speak on behalf of the board in situations where it would be helpful to do so, and provides guidance addressing when regents can use university marks or official letterhead when speaking or writing on university matters, and directs OBR to provide regents with individualized letterhead that they may use in their official capacity. The existing language that requires a regent to make clear that they are not speaking for the board or the university when expressing their individual view on university matters, regardless of the form of that communication, takes, remains the same. Chair Mayron, that concludes my summary of the action items.
Thank you. Before Regent Verheugen makes a motion to approve the report of the Governance and Policy Committee, you are welcome to ask questions, make comments, or ask for an item to be separated out from the report to be voted on. Are there any questions, comments, or requests to separate out an item? Yes, Regent Farnsworth.
Thanks, Chair Mayron. I'd like to separate the action items, so take the bylaws separate from the Code of Conduct.
Okay, so you're asking to separate out the Code of Conduct and also the changes to the bylaws so that we discuss those separately from the rest of the.
Yes, yes, and then I think I'm supposed to.
No,
Go, yeah, after that, yep. That's what I'm asking, yes. That is exactly what I'm asking.
Okay, I want to be clear what you're asking. If you're separating out the bylaws and you're separating out the Code of Conduct, it seems to me those are the only action items that we took. So what am I missing on misunderstanding? Are you talking about separating out certain items within the bylaws and certain items within the Code of Conduct?
Yeah, my understanding is that, like, in this committee report, for instance, we would take the action items from a committee report as a whole, and so I'm asking for a separate vote on the bylaws and the Code of Conduct, and then we'll go from there.
All right. Rather than having discussion on it, I'm going to indicate that in light of Regent Farnsworth's request, Regent Verheugen, if you could move first the adoption of the proposed amendments to the bylaws on behalf of the committee, and then we will take up separately a motion with respect to amendments to the Code of Conduct.
Chair Mayron, I move adoption of the proposed amendments to the bylaws of the Board of Regents and to direct the Office of the Board of Regents to make any other necessary technical corrections to align board policy with the amended bylaws.
All right. Then is there, I don't think we need a second for that. Is that right? All right. Any discussion then, Regent Farnsworth, on the motion with respect to the bylaws?
Thank you, Chair Mayron. And now I have a second request, which is about dividing the question on the bylaws. So I would like to divide the question as a whole on the bylaws and take up the consideration of amendments to Article 6, Section E, revised number 4, separately from the other amendments in the bylaws. So that would be the request to appear language. So Article 6, Section E, which is the request to appear language, separately from the rest of the amendments to the bylaws.
All right, that request is granted, and so I think at this point we take up first that section and then the bylaws, or do we take up everything else in the bylaws and then we address that section separately? Pardon? Oh, it's my prerogative. All right. Well, why don't we take up first then the section having to do with appearances before the board, address that first, and then once we get a vote on that, then we will take up the bylaws. All right?
Sure.
So would you like to speak to that?
I would
issue?
love to.
All right. Go
Thank
ahead.
you, Chair Mayron. I mean, I don't have a ton to add, and because parliamentary, we have to jump through a bunch of hoops in order to do this. I feel like it sort of elevates the topic, at least externally. But my comments on the new request to appear language, I think the board is in university community generally understands where I'm at on this topic around request to appear and process to address the board. And so when I've been doing my best to do my own due diligence to follow along with the governance and policy discussions and review this proposed language. And I am not in favor of the language as we have it now. I felt like I wasn't able to support this additional amended language, especially the part that adds criteria that the chair of the board may consider when ruling on a request. In general, and this is how I feel about the underlying policy as well, I just think it creates too much subjectivity in how we handle these requests. Of course, I would like to see it done a different way, but that discussion aside for another day, this was the way for me to make sure that I was, not able to support this piece, but supportive of the rest of the changes to the bylaws. So that's really all I have to add. I'm happy to answer any questions on that, but that's simply my remarks. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Regent Verheugen.
Yeah, I speak in support of the revisions to subpart 4 of Section E, primarily because we've been around this block 4 times now since Regent Farnsworth and I joined the board, and Regent Farnsworth respectfully continue as a board to not necessarily support your position. But this process after, what are we now, 9 months, 6 months into the school year? I've lost track of time. 9 months almost into this fiscal year, since July. The work of the Governance and Policy Committee was to develop this, which would create further transparency, and actually, I think, a significant amount more transparency than requests right now, which just go to the chair, and the chair looks at them and decides what to do with them, and then makes a decision. Under these amendments, the chair would need to consult with the vice chairs, and the president. And this also provides more transparency to the university community on the items that the chair will be considering when making a decision on that request. That way, the university community knows what information they should work to provide and the rationale for the request. And the board should let us know when the request was made and what the decision was on it. And so I am supporting Section E, subpart 4.
All right, thank you. Any other comments or questions regarding this particular section of the bylaws? Yes, Regent Kenyanya.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Regents, for the conversation. I'll just pick up where Regent Verheugen left off with a question for Regent Farnsworth. Again, I think the board is aware of your position. I'd be curious if you consider this an improvement from current policy, or I don't know. I know it's not what you would draw, but I mean, do you see this as an improvement?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Regent Kenyanya. To answer that question and then just make one other remark, I guess my answer to that is I see why others may see it as an improvement, and I approach this again very respectfully and sincerely, and this was the only way to be able to register my general comments about this. Again, not bringing any other motions or anything forward today, just to be clear to everybody. But I don't, because it continues to fall for me out of alignment with an area that I believe the policy is subjective, and I don't think that served us well as a board. And so, yes, it adds some more criteria that the chair may consider when addressing requests, but because I just don't fundamentally believe in the underlying policy, that's why I'm not in favor of it. So.
No follow-up, Madam Chair. Thank you.
All right, any other comments or questions on this section of the bylaws? Yes, Regent Gully.
I just want to say for the record that I continue to agree with Regent Farnsworth on this issue, and so I appreciate the work that you've done, but I still agree that it is more subjective than I'd like it to be, and I still support public comment in our meetings.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions on this amendment? Then at this point, we will take a vote first on this amendment, and then once we vote on the amendment, this section of the amendment, this section of the amendment to the bylaws, and then we will take up the bylaws completely. All those in favor of this amendment, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed?
No.
No.
All right, if I'm counting correctly, everybody's here, correct? So 10 in favor.
Bo is remote.
Bo, I believe, said aye.
Okay.
Yep, thumbs up, all right. Yes, all right, that meant aye. So 10 in favor, 2 opposed, so the motion with respect to the amendment to this section passes. At this point, then, we will take up the remainder of the bylaws. So it's just so I'm clear, we're not, are we taking up the bylaws with this new amendment now embedded, or just we're taking up the remainder of the bylaws, which would allow, for example, Regent Farnsworth, if he was in favor of the other edits, to vote in favor of it?
The latter, Chair Mayron, because we separated out that section, that was merely a vote on whether the board would adopt the changes to Section E, Subpart 4. We are now voting on all of the remaining revisions to the bylaws.
Okay, all right. Then, any discussion with respect to the balance of the bylaws?
Can I just clarify, this doesn't include the code of conduct language,
No,
right?
we're
Okay.
going to address that separately.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, all those in favor of the remainder, the proposed amendments to the remainder of the bylaws, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Regent Tarabi, I don't think we heard what you voted.
All right.
All right, all right, another thumbs up. Okay, all right, this motion passes then with respect to the balance of the bylaws. All right, at this point then, we will move to the code of conduct, and we will address at that point, let me get to the right section here. That's the one that is before you. You've got the handwritten section. This addresses section 9 of the Code of Conduct, and Regent Farnsworth asked that it be separated out, which it is, so let's open it up for discussion with.
We have to move first.
Oh, we need a motion first, sorry. All right, then we need a motion with respect to adoption of these proposed amendments to section 9 of the Code of Conduct.
And to be clear, Chair Mayron, it's moving everything we voted affirmatively for this morning. So I move adoption of the amendments to the Code of Conduct for members of the Board of Regents, which includes the edits as shown in the docket, plus the amendment we adopted this morning.
Okay, all right. And then Regent Farnsworth, did you want to ask that we vote separately on section 9, or that we go ahead and just address all of the amendments to the bylaw?
Altogether is fine.
Altogether, all right. Then, any discussion with respect to the proposed amendments to the Code of Conduct for members of the Board of Regents?
Yeah, Chair Mayron.
Yes, Regent Farnsworth.
Thank you, Chair Mayron. While we may have had a disagreement on the other one, I'm not opposed to, offering compliments and thanks where they're due. So I just want to thank Chair Verhalen, Vice Chair Mayron in governance and policy capacity, and other folks for the amendment you made this morning to the letterhead portion. I was not comfortable with this language previously in previous iterations, but the amendment, particularly the individualized letterhead piece, really captures the concerns that I had and makes me able to support this. So I really appreciate the policy work on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions with respect to the proposed amendments to the Code of Conduct? Yes, Regent Gully.
I I don't write a lot of letters of recommendation, but I am wondering about this language. It just gives me pause around the letters of recommendation. I know that a lot of regents do write letters of recommendation, and I particularly wonder about the second provision saying that we can't use our what's now going to be individual university letterhead for letters of recommendation for external things. I'm not clear about why that feels important. I can understand the internal, right, like not using our weight to throw around the university to help someone get admission or something like that, but for external sources, and I don't think I've actually written a single letter of recommendation for anyone since coming onto the board, but I do know that other board members do. So can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. Why don't I turn to the chair and I'll add if necessary.
So, Regent Gully, by definition, the individualized letterhead has a different definition than using university marks or letterhead. So you can use your individualized letterhead to write that letter of recommendation outside of the university. You just can't use university letterhead or university marks on a letter of recommendation outside of the university. So you can't create your own personal letterhead and slap a maroon and gold M on it, for example, but there's nothing in here prohibiting you from using your individualized letterhead because individualized letterhead has a different definition under this provision.
Isn't that what this says? Regents are prohibited from using the title of regent, university marks, or letterhead for letters of recommendation for an individual.
Within the university, yes. And the second one says you're prohibited from using university marks or letterhead for letters of recommendation. It doesn't prohibit you from using your individualized letterhead.
Oh, okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Thank you for that question and the clarification. Any other comments or questions regarding the proposed amendments to the Code of Conduct?
Can I just ask a follow-up? Because I wonder if this interpretation, I'm reading it and it's hard to see that individual letterhead is, could we just add, and maybe this hopefully would be a friendly amendment, add like with the exception of Regents' individual letterhead for letters of recommendation?
I'm not going to accept that as a friendly amendment. We worked really closely with OBR and OGC on this language. And yeah, I'm not going to accept that as a friendly amendment. We govern ourselves, so if someone misuses it in a way that violates this, we can have a conversation about it. But I believe it is clear, given that the sentence, the end of the paragraph above says OBR shall provide individualized university letterhead. And then later in that second bullet specifically reference shall avoid using university marks or letterhead for letters of recommendation. So those are two separate things.
Okay. Any other comments or questions regarding the proposed amendments to the Code of Conduct? Hearing none?
Sure.
Yeah.
Briefly, I'll be supporting the resolution. I will just say, and I think with Regent Verhaelen's explanation, it makes sense. I think I shared some of the confusion. I think with that explanation, I can now see that reading of it, and I think we're all aligned. But I don't know, I just want to acknowledge that you're not crazy, because I was going back and forth on him a little bit. But thank you.
Okay. All right. Hearing no more questions or discussion, all those in favor of the proposed amendments, the motion to adopt the proposed amendments to the Code of Conduct for members of the Board of Regents, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say no. The motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Mayron. In addition to the action items, the committee discussed the onboarding process plan for new regents elected in 2025. I include all of those regents not on the Governance and Policy Committee to review the presentation and provide any additional feedback to the board office. Thank you, Chair Mayron. That concludes my report.
Thank you very much. All right, moving to reports for mission and fulfillment and finance and operations. Regent Hips, if you would provide your report.
Thank you, Chair
Oh,
Mayor.
and before you do that, let me just say their reports will note that the items that the committee approved on behalf of the board as well.
Thank you, Chair Mayor. We had a very fun meeting yesterday, and the Finance and Operations Committee unanimously approved 2 items on behalf of the board. Those items were the Crookston Campus Plan and the consent report, which included updates to the Central Reserves budget, 3 purchases of goods and services, $5 million and over, and off-cycle tuition rate changes. There are no other action items approved this month. Thank you, Chair Mayor. This concludes my report.
All right, thank you very much. At this time, we will move to mission fulfillment. Regent Ruth Johnson, if you could provide your report, please.
Mission Fulfillment Committee unanimously approved 2 items on behalf of the board this month. Those items were amendments to the Board of Regents policy, specifically conflict resolution for student academic complaints. And we approved the consent report, which included academic program changes. There were no other action items approved this month. Thank you, Chair Mayron. That concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Next, the Special Committee on Student Affairs, Regent Farnsworth, if you could share your report, please.
Thank you, Chair Mayron. The Special Committee on Student Affairs did not consider any action items this month. The Special Committee started our second meeting by engaging in a conversation focused on student basic needs insecurity across the system. Duluth Interim Vice Chancellor of Student Life, Jeremy Leiferman, and Twin Cities Boynton Health Director of Public Health, Michelle Trumpy, provided the information on changes in recent decades to how students access food, the support services available, service expansion efforts, and current funding requests. With tuition costs up nationwide, many students are no longer able to pay for college by working a summer job. The university has created campus-level task forces to address current needs and find solutions for future needs across the system. For our second item, the Special Committee walked through the university's efforts to foster a sense of community and belonging amongst our students. Senior Director of Student Engagement and Wellbeing, David Israel Swenson from the Morris campus, and Assistant Vice Provost for Student Life, Megan Miller-Toole from the Twin Cities campus, led the discussion, which described various ways our campuses foster connection. They described efforts aimed at creating community and how our campuses provide a variety of student groups to create opportunities to build belonging. The committee also received an update on the 4 main surveys that outline key metrics in this area. Notably, engaged students are 18% more likely to persist and have higher rates of academic success. I'd strongly encourage all members who are not part of this committee to review the recording. I think it was a really excellent discussion on all fronts, with a special shout out to our student representatives. I think it's valuable to have student representatives in all our areas, but it felt particularly impactful yesterday in these discussions. Thank you, Chair Mayron. That concludes my report.
Thank you very much, Regent Farnsworth. Finally, the Special Committee on University Workforce, Regent Gully, if you could share your report.
Thank you, Chair. The Special Committee on University Workforce did not consider any action items this month. For our first item, the Special Committee heard an overview of system-wide employee engagement and how that work advances the university's mission. Dean Andrew Aline also provided examples of how the Twin Cities College of Science and Engineering applies employment engagement initiatives to improve leadership and outcomes in his workforce. During the discussion, Special Committee members expressed how impressed they were with how the college grows and prepares individuals from within the university for promotion into leadership roles in an effort to recruit talented employees as well as retain those already within the university. Next, we discussed labor relations at the university. The presentation highlighted the work of our labor represented employees and how OHR's labor relations team connects with labor leaders. I hope my colleagues not only found this special committee, I hope my colleagues not on the special committee will also find this helpful. The discussion walked us through the negotiations process, the results of which we recently saw when the board approved the first collective bargaining agreement with our graduate assistants. So I would like to commend the teams on both sides for their work at getting to a first contract for the graduate assistants and reaching and signing that agreement. Finally, the Special Committee received an information item from Vice President Horstman that provided a summary of the contracts with labor represented employee groups at the university. A few items that Vice President Horstman highlighted included the addition of the graduate assistants, the 3 AFSCME contracts, healthcare, clerical, and office and technical that have merged and will be negotiating under one contract. Those negotiations will be starting in the first half of this year, and negotiations with Teamsters, which will also be starting earlier this year than they have historically occurred due to the dedication on both sides. Thank you, Chair Mayor, and this concludes my report.
Thank you very much, Regent Gully. At this time, we will turn to old business because that concludes our committee reports. Is there any old business to come before the board? Hearing none, is there any new business to come before the board? Seeing none. As there is no additional business before the board, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.